Man, it's been a while, but welcome to another edition of Shooting the Breeze. I'm Samir Kumar, joined with Tim Mohawk. Tim, how you doing, man? It's been a while since we've done this.
Yes, it has, Samir. It's been a long, long time. It's I think back in November. It looks like. So it's been wow. We're coming up on 8 or 9 months here. Maybe even more than that.
I think like a year.
We're not that far, at least from published. Yeah, I think we haven't published one in quite some time. So it's been a while, but loving it out here, living it up, I should say, in the Midwest, for better and worse.
And I'm still here in New York. You know, the greatest state in the world.
That's my home.
But,
home.
You'll be back here before you know it, man. You know.
Stomping grounds.
You know. But I must say, it's been looking very good for my Brooklyn Nets in the time you've been out there and I've been here.
Oh, it's been Samir. I know from our previous episodes of this, way back to last summer, basically a year ago. I remember talking about scenarios with you about the Brooklyn Nets, and one of them involved Kyrie Irving because of his ties to Brooklyn and how he could maybe be a possible free agent acquisition down the road. And we were just kicking that can around, and lo and behold, not only is Kyrie coming to Brooklyn, he also got a good buddy to come with him, and I think he's pretty popular. I don't know. I think he's pretty well known to the basketball world. I know I've been out of touch for a little while, but I think Kevin Durant, he might be a guy with a little bit of clout.
Yeah, I would say so. Two-time Finals MVP, has an MVP to his resume. One of the best all-time scorers.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he's okay.
He's a decent player. He's a little beat up, but he's a decent player.
You'll be fine. Well, man, first of all, I'm so pumped to have Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn. You know why?
Go ahead. Why?
Because he's from New Jersey. He grew up rooting for this team. This is his team. This is just like me growing up as a Nets fan, dreaming to play for this team. I'm just so pumped to have that. I get it. They're in Brooklyn now. He grew up a New Jersey Nets fan, but still applies. I just think going home for him was a big deal because on Instagram he posted a picture of him as a kid with the New Jersey Nets basketball saying home has always been in the cards. And just from hearing, from behind the scenes, him being home in Brooklyn or, in the New Jersey area meant a lot to him. After he won the finals in 2016, apparently he said, the only thing that would top this right now is if I did this for my hometown team. He has always felt an emotional connection to the Nets organization throughout his entire career as well, but he's made it a secret until this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this, Samir, because I was curious when the news broke, when the Woj bomb came through. What was your initial reaction? Where were you, first and foremost, and what was when you saw the tweet, when you saw the news, however you saw it, what was your actual reaction? What was your physical and verbal? What was the very first thing you did? Because I was thinking that as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh man, Samir must be going crazy right now.
Well, funny thing is, I was actually in the borough of Brooklyn when that KD Woj bomb dropped. I was moving my brother out of his apartment in Bushwick. So, lo and behold, I was in Brooklyn when the news broke. Very fitting, being a Nets fan, a lifelong Nets fan, to be in Brooklyn for when this news dropped. But, it was just such a stressful, hot day, having to move around empty equipment, You know how moving out can go. It's stressful as hell. But in between times where I was kind of lounging around, relaxing, catching my breath, I'd go on Twitter because I knew that free agency started at 6 p.m. So I had my Woj bombs notifications on. I had my Shams, the rest. And when Woj dropped that notification that said Kevin Durant is going to announce his decision on the Boardroom Instagram page at 6 p.m., I was like, I have to make sure that I'm not doing anything when that happens because this is my time to shine. if something happens. Like, I just knew that, Brooklyn was very much in the cards at that point in time because the betting odds were in Brooklyn's favor when Kevin Durant was about to make his decision. Stephen A. Smith was on record saying it's a lock that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving end up in Brooklyn. And so many other guys have just been saying, Kendrick Perkins, for instance, who has a very close relationship with Kevin Durant, even said that Brooklyn is the front runner for Kevin Durant. So I was just like, I need to pay attention, I'll help move out and whatnot, but it's going to be quick because I have to be locked into my phone. And then, when we were texting back and forth too a little bit, you were texting me, Colin Coward just dropped that Kevin Durant is telling, or pardon me, the Brooklyn Nets are telling people that they got Kevin Durant. And I was like, well, I don't want to get my hopes up yet because this is Colin Coward. What does he really know? Yeah. And then when the Woj bomb dropped, I was freaking out. I went to my brother. I was like, we got Kevin Durant. He was like, what? He was too busy moving out because that was his apartment. And then, I was just like we were just both going crazy. We were both like, we got Kevin Durant. Oh my God. After years of being the made fun of one, we stole what the Knicks wanted all season long. You know how we reacted because that was big news. And, at certain points of the day, for the rest of the day, I'd scream Kevin Durant through the streets of Brooklyn. Granted, the streets were kind of empty, so...
I was going to say, did people storm the streets after that? I would anticipate massive celebration.
Nah, I was Bushwick,
Oh,
it's kind of deep, so not really, no. So, the rest goes on, I was talking my shit, I had a former coworker unfollow me on Twitter because I was talking my shit, and then he refollowed me. He was like, yo, my bad, I was so tight, because, yeah, it's like, I started unfollowing mad people because I was just so pissed, he's a Knicks fan. I'm just like, it's all good, bro, we got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, I'm not sweating, I
gotcha.
So, man, like, just all different types of emotions were going through me when the news dropped. Like, growing up being a New Jersey Nets fan, I had a good, when I was a kid, like, in elementary school, later on in elementary school, I'll say, and then middle school, I got to root for Jason Kidd and Vince Carter and the same backcourt, a little Richard Jefferson action. That team, I've been on record saying this my entire life, if that team had a big man, they would have been a finals team. So, there's that. But then, once they traded away Vince Carter for a package of basically nobody, like Courtney Lee, and Tony Battie, Rafer Alston, none of them panned out whatsoever. Going through the 12-70 season, that was just heartbreaking. Like, back when I was on Facebook during that age, back when I didn't have a concept of annoying people based on posting statuses, I'd always bitch about the Nets, saying, oh, Nets, why can't you just freaking win a game? Like, people would say they suck, It was mostly Knicks fans be like, just face it, the Nets suck. And then I would be out there talking my shit, be like, well, we're about to get LeBron James. We're about to get somebody. And then, sure enough, we didn't end up with anybody. You know what? Travis Outlaw was our main signing from that free agency. And, then the Carmelo Anthony trade rumors showed up. I'm like, all right, Brooklyn born and a little bit raised, even though he moved to D.C. We're going to get Melo. Sure enough, the Knicks trade for him. So I'm like, okay, well, we got Darren Williams, and like 24 hours later, so, I was optimistic. I'm like, we might have got the better player, This is, the best point guard in the NBA at the time.
That just brought me back to college. That just brought me back to senior year of college when you were educating me on Durant.
Yeah. I was like, this guy still has it. I tried to convince myself that he was still elite. Like, he just needs to find his confidence again. So, okay, we get Darren Williams in 2011. He was the top 2 3-point guard for the last year in New Jersey. I fully embraced that. Going to Brooklyn, I was like, we're going to get Dwight Howard. We got Gerald Wallace now, Joe Johnson. Now Darren Williams, like this team's gonna come over and take over New York, and Dwight Howard didn't end up coming through because he was stupid and like waived his ability to be traded. I don't know why he did that, but whatever. That ended up in our favor. So sure enough, we re-signed Gerald Wallace to 4 years and $48 million. I think 48, maybe 40, somewhere around there. Whatever. I don't want to get too deep into that because I'm gonna have an aneurysm thinking about that. So, that happened, and then the way to get rid of that contract and to potentially build up our team to win a championship was to get Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. I love Kevin Garnett, but he was over the hill. Paul Pierce, he didn't want to be there whatsoever. I don't look fondly upon the Paul Pierce time in Brooklyn whatsoever. So, dealing with that heartbreak and then just overchanging the management, firing Billy King, which was much needed, buying out Darren Williams in the last year of his deal, or last 2 years, I forget at this point because I'm just so upset. I don't want to keep rambling about the bad times in Brooklyn.
I think the summation of all of that is it's been a grind, it's been a struggle.
Yes.
And I can remember when Brooklyn made the trade with Boston, and it was just, I think I might have been on the way. Maybe it was shortly thereafter. I was on my way back up, speaking of college, back up to Oswego. I think it was,
right.
I'd have been going up early to cover some Oswego hockey during the winter break. And I think I remember it wasn't that long after the big trade. I think because I remember talking to my dad about it, and he, my dad and I are hardly the most qualified NBA fans, but I remember him asking about I don't know that Jason Kidd's in Brooklyn and like coaching at that point, and
I forgot about that.
my timeline is blurred, but at the end of the day, through those trades, obviously the loss of draft picks, it's been a process as Brooklyn has kind of gotten their footing under them in New York after making the move, and obviously for the Nets fans, it's been an adjustment from the time of the move over to all the moves that have been made from here from then till now, I should say, and you guys are kind of you're now being rewarded for your patience, I think is what the end goal is, and I think I don't want to jump too far ahead, but obviously we'll get to the Knicks and Nets and their various roles in New York now, but first and foremost, you mentioned Kyrie, coming to the Nets and him being from New Jersey and him growing up a Nets fan, but he was the catalyst here that brought Kevin Durant as well, as it seems they're a package deal. I was unaware that they were that close personally. If I recall, KD's a guy from the Washington, D.C. area, if not over in Maryland. I can't remember which side of the border there he was in, but I think he was close to Washington growing up, and Kyrie's up in New Jersey, which, isn't that far away, but, I didn't really appreciate the fact that they had this long-standing relationship to the point where one was going to sway the other, perhaps, on where he was going. But obviously Kyrie is kind of the centerpiece here in that not only did he go home to his roots, he also convinced KD to come with him. And obviously Kyrie's got an interesting legacy to this point in his career. I mean, he was with LeBron in Cleveland, and we know he wanted to kind of spread his wings and try to be the guy, and he went to Boston, and in Boston it was mixed results, and obviously this past year for the Celtics, I love Boston dysfunction more than I think most people on the planet.
Me too. I'm ready to go in on Danny Ainge.
I hate Boston sports teams. But
me too.
I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on kind of the role Kyrie played while he was in Boston, both good and bad. I mean, I don't know. I know there's a lot of different pieces there. I know, obviously, Danny Ainge's name comes up all the time, and Brad Stevens, and, you could talk about Gordon Hayward, all these different pieces that didn't really work as envisioned because it felt like maybe a little over a year ago, we were talking about Stevens as maybe the next Popovich, and then Boston kind of limped into the playoffs, even though they were the 4th seed last year, and underachieved in the postseason, and obviously that kind of led to the point where Kyrie was unhappy, and everybody seemed to just want a parting of the ways. Now Kemba's over there in Boston, but coming from that situation to Brooklyn, what do you kind of see Kyrie? How do you see him transforming his role from a talented, obviously super talented player that was maybe miscast in Boston to how he fits in Brooklyn?
Well, first off, I'll get into a little bit of the basketball side of things before I go into how I perceive the situation in Boston when it comes to Kyrie Irving. Okay, with Kyrie Irving, he's, let's say, more of an isolation player than most players in the NBA. He loves to run the ISO. So, having said that, the Nets are perceived to be more of a three-point shooting, move the ball type of team. They ran more isolation plays than the Celtics last season, and the Celtics had Kyrie Irving on their roster to do that. So that's going to favor Kyrie Irving going forward this season. And you have to add in the fact that Kyrie Irving has superior dribbling skills, crossovers, his ability to get into the paint, inside out. The floor is going to be all his with all his dribbling and whatnot. He's going to have so much more freedom in the Brooklyn Nets offense to do whatever he wants to do because of the space he has and the isolation opportunities. He doesn't have to worry about feeding other people's egos as much because, let's be real, I'll get into this in a little bit more deeper in a little bit, but Boston had so much talent for their own good. So chemistry was a problem at certain points during the season. Brooklyn also has better big men that fits Kyrie Irving's personnel in Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Jordan. Both of them can finish with ease at the rim and run the pick and roll. All Kyrie Irving needs to do is get a pick from one of them. And then that'll create space for a drive. And then they run and roll to the basket. All Kyrie Irving needs to do is drop it into Jarrett Allen or DeAndre Jordan. They'll slam it right in. They don't have to worry about these guys like Aaron Baines. Al Horford's talented. I'm not going to say he's not, but he's not like going to slam it down off a pick and roll with ease like DeAndre Jordan and Jarrett Allen will. So that fits Kyrie Irving's persona much better than Al Horford or Aaron Baines and whatnot. So another thing is Brooklyn ran the 7th most pick and rolls last season, whereas Boston ran the 24th. So that's also another favor. Brooklyn runs the pick and roll a lot more than Boston. So Kyrie Irving is a maestro in the pick and roll. Once you give him a pick and roll, he has so many different options. He can dump it in for an easy dunk to his big man, or get the amount of space he needs to get, cross over the defender, drive to the hole, or just pull up for a mid-range jumper at the elbow or inside the free throw line, or just drive and finish at the rim. So many different options Kyrie Irving has there. Kyrie is also just probably the best ball handler in the league. So I think from a basketball standpoint, with the amount of freedom that I perceive he's going to have, he's just going to take it to another level, especially being in an environment where fans are going to take more of an interest to him, being that he's a local guy and that he's a top dog, whereas in Boston, things are kind of different in terms of how the fans think. They think more of, if you don't give us a championship, we don't like you. In Brooklyn, they'll appreciate any type of greatness they can get. And it coming from a local homegrown kid, that's just going to mean a lot to him. The show is going to be his in Brooklyn for a whole year. The show is going to be Kyrie Irving, and he's going to take full advantage of that. That's why I think he can make the leap from being just, a great point guard to an MVP type point guard, because the system that they're going to run is going to favor him, and just the locality to being his roots and his family is also just going to bring out more from him.
Sure. Well, I think what can be gleaned, obviously, is that even as good as D'Angelo Russell was last year for the Nets, and how he kind of has, he found himself in Brooklyn after, struggling out in L.A. prior to that. needless to say, Kyrie's going to be an upgrade, even though D'Angelo was good. But like you said, this is kind of Kyrie seems to be stepping into a system where he'll be top dog, where I would imagine the offense is going to run through him, obviously, at least for this upcoming season. I mean, we all know Kevin Durant's got the Achilles, and he's going to take the year to recover. But obviously they're friends. Obviously they share a bond that led them to this decision where, hey, not only does Kyrie want to go home and play, like I said earlier, he was able to convince Kevin Durant to join him when there was a healthy amount of high-profile teams that were recruiting Kevin Durant, including the Knicks. And Kevin Durant's a good enough friend of Kyrie to say, yeah, I'm coming with you. And obviously he liked what Brooklyn was pitching to him. But I don't really want to focus yet on the KD-Kyrie dynamic when they're on the floor together, because obviously that's a ways away at the moment. But Kyrie, personality-wise, as you talked about, this is him coming home. This is his homecoming. But the role in Boston has been talked about a lot because obviously...
Right, and I forgot to get kind of deep into that. Like, I got a little too distracted with how he's just going to fit in Brooklyn because I'm just so excited to see him. Growing up a Jason Kidd fan, going through the Vince Carter era with me too. Just like, he's one of us. I feel the personal connection with Kyrie Irving. But with Boston now,
yes.
I just think the media likes to twist him in a certain way. Like, I'm going to credit my guy here, Mr. Veniscar from Twitter. Give him a follow if you want. But I saw an interesting thread that pretty much took the words right out of my mouth about how Kyrie is perceived in the media. Okay, let's see Buddy Hield. He was born in December 1992. He's considered a young developing player. Kyrie Irving, born in March 1992. He's old, and we've seen his best already. How does that work, Tim? Tell me that. How's that possible? Just because Buddy Hield was drafted like 5 years after Kyrie Irving, I literally think it's been 5 years, 2016. There's a 9-month difference between the two. How does that work?
Bias. That's how it works.
Okay, bias. We got that out of the way. Okay, now I'm gonna get more deep into this. Okay, earlier this season, I would say Kyrie Irving was in the Boston Celtics were in Miami. Okay, so you know what players like to do when they're in Miami? They like to go and party. They like to go out and experience the nightlife of Miami. But Kyrie Irving wasn't having any of that. What Kyrie Irving was doing instead was taking shots after the game, after a huge loss. And you know what? None of his teammates went and joined him in Miami after that game. It was only Kyrie out there, and he wanted to get better. That was his main focus. Was just, I want to be a leader. I want to lead this team. I want to bring Boston to the next level. That's why Kyrie Irving left Cleveland. He didn't want to be in LeBron's shadow. He wanted to do it on his own. So, it was time. He got his championship in 2016. In 2017, he just saw the writing on the wall for Cleveland. He said, we're not going to win. We're not going to beat this team with the team we have right now here in Cleveland. So, first year in Boston went pretty well. He got hurt in the playoffs. Boston made a deep run. That's all good. So that, I feel like, gave some Boston players a sense of entitlement. Terry Rozier, he went off and became Scary Terry. Jason Tatum, was a darling in the media because he showed tremendous ability to finish at the rim and shoot the three-point ball only at 19 years old. And Jaylen Brown took a step up from his rookie season. He flashed potential. They all flash potential, and I give them credit for that. But now with Kyrie Irving coming back into the fold, these guys had that sense of entitlement and went out and partied in Miami instead of going to the gym with Kyrie Irving and working on their game when Boston was in a slump. They lost to Miami. They lost to Orlando the next day too, I believe, according to these tweets. What kind of message does that send to your group when the best player on your team is out there trying to focus on getting better, and the rest of the players are out partying? What message does that send? Does the media want to glorify that? No. They want to put it on Kyrie Irving because they love to hate on Kyrie Irving. All right? Go after Jason Tatum, who, in my opinion, is overrated and doesn't possess the ability to be a superstar, at least in my eyes. He has all the intangibles to be a great player. He doesn't give a fuck enough to go out there and make his team better. Jaylen Brown, overrated bum. 3rd overall pick in 2016? You had Jamal Murray drafted after him. You had Karis LeVert drafted after him. These are guys that are better players than Jaylen Brown. We don't talk enough about how Boston botched every single draft since they got the Brooklyn Nets picks. They could have had Jamal Murray. Okay, fine. Maybe at the time, the scouting was so good on Jaylen Brown. I'm losing my train of thought here because I'm just so, upset at how the media wants to go after Kyrie Irving when, in reality, it's Boston that is the one that did him wrong. Tim, take over for a few minutes. I need to regather.
Well, I think what has been the consistent thread, which is ironic between Boston and Brooklyn to varying degrees, and this is from someone who's not a fan of either team, I think what both coaches have done when they've been successful in both places has been getting the guys to buy into the system. And, I think both teams have kind of shown the ability to put guys in roles, very specific roles, that maximize team success, and I know the NBA is a superstar league. I know it's a league where, generally speaking, the teams that have those big-time names are going to be the ones at the end of the day competing for the Larry O'Brien. I mean, it's nothing new. It's nothing. That's no cutting-edge analysis there. But I think in Boston, you kind of had why people were talking about Stevens as maybe the next Popovich, is he was putting a lot of these players that you just mentioned into roles that worked. And I'm not all crediting their success to Stevens, but I'm saying that it seemed like prior to Kyrie and maybe the first year of Kyrie, those roles were understood and accepted. But then what you're talking about, as these young guys kind of got bigger and bolder in their notoriety and some of the success they were having on the floor, the ego starts to get in the way. And that's always a challenge no matter what sport you're in, no matter what team you're in, no matter what the cap space is, no matter what the situation is. You always have to try to manage that and try to keep the focus on the system. And again, I'm not trying to say Stevens is the ultimate answer here. I'm not trying to say he's, listening to him is going to be what propels the Celtics to, to getting another championship.
I don't know if it's about listening to him, though. He wasn't able to put the pieces together in Boston this year. That's the coach's job. You got another criticism of Stevens
here. The organization balances out with its cast, right? And it's not just Stevens. It's Danny Ainge is in this as well.
I got words for him. Just you.
Right. Well, that's my next question: is how do you think that group failed? I mean, you're talking about the talent that they drafted, but how do you think that group failed to maximize with Kyrie the other pieces that were in place that they drafted around Kyrie? Why do you think that failed there in Boston?
You know how it failed? Favoritism. Brad Stevens wanted to get Gordon Hayward back into the rotation so badly. He was like, I love Gordon Hayward. I coached him in Butler. Fine. That's all good and everything. But what you got to realize is that it's not going to rub on the other players the right way if you're going to try to favor one player over the others. Gordon Hayward needed to earn his spot back into the rotation because of what the players did in the past. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum took the step up from the year before. That's where I'll kind of defend them in a way because their opportunities were less when Gordon Hayward came back. Brad Stevens tried to force feed Gordon Hayward a lot, tried to give him the ball to shoot in a lot of possessions where, it just wasn't warranted. Gordon Hayward needed to slowly work his way back in, but Brad Stevens was so insistent on getting him involved more into the offense than he should have. But here's where I'll get on Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge has always viewed the Boston Celtics as a business first, and players' happiness second. This is where it bit him in the ass this time around. All right. In 2017, Isaiah Thomas was coming off an MVP caliber season. Granted, he got hurt. That shoulder injury definitely took its toll on him, made him lesser of a talent than otherwise. And they had an opportunity to go get Kyrie Irving, business-wise. That makes a lot of sense. But here's where it doesn't make sense. People around the NBA are going to start to realize that they're treated more as an asset instead of a person in the organization. Anthony Davis's father spoke out and said, I don't want my son playing on that team because I look at what they did to Isaiah Thomas. Kyrie Irving saw how it worked inside the dynamic of the Celtics. He's like, this is how you treat players? I'm sure Kyrie Irving deep down thought it was messed up what they did to Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas is the same guy that played in a playoff game the day after his sister passed away in a car accident and dropped 50. I forget if it was the exact day after or maybe a couple days after, but regardless, that's an open wound that takes years, if a lifetime, to heal. Losing your sister so tragically. Avery Bradley, before the game, had to really console him, like on the sideline, on the bench. Isaiah Thomas obviously was crying because that's just a tough situation to be in. He goes out there and has the game of his life. Helps Boston take down the Wizards in a tough, hard-fought series. And, pours his heart out for Boston. And gave them a figure that, for years to come, he was their guy. He was their icon. Tom Brady hailed him as, like, one of the next few Boston GOATs. He was, when you get that kind of praise from a Boston legend himself, that carries weight. And then a couple months later, for him to just be traded away, that tells me that's just business all the way. That's not taking into the consideration of players and fans whatsoever. So even going back further, when Danny Ainge traded Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett to Brooklyn, Paul Pierce wanted to retire a Celtic, dude. He wanted his legacy to be a one-team player only. He loved Boston, But Danny Ainge just said, it's time to make a change. We'll try to finesse the Brooklyn Nets into taking these two guys. We're going to try to steal their future and, rebuild and be in a position to be a contender at the same time. So that's where Danny Ainge screwed up in this whole entire thing. If you want to take the chance to be a rebuilding team back then and then go forward with all the assets he had and build talent around a team to be a contender, he messed up because he had a chance to get Kawhi Leonard last summer when the Toronto Raptors ended up acquiring him, but he refused to trade Jaylen Brown and maybe Jason Tatum in any potential deal. Maybe I wouldn't have traded away Tatum. I mean, I probably would have if that meant a championship. But if you're going to be a little bit stingy, I would hold on to Tatum. But Jaylen Brown should have been expendable in any trade for Kawhi Leonard, especially if your team is trying to win a championship. Like, that couldn't have rubbed Kyrie Irving the right way. You're like, okay. Like, you're trying to build a team while rebuilding at the same time. You're trying to be a championship contender, but also rebuild. You want the best of both worlds. Well, that's not how it works. And Al Horford also followed them out the door because he saw the writing on the wall in that organization as well. They rebounded and they got Kemba Walker. We'll see how that works. But how I view Danny Ainge is just kind of a sleazeball, honestly, because he doesn't take his players' feelings into mind and only cares about the business.
And you'll see that in, I think, other sports and in other ways. I mean, you hear about all kinds of things. Even George Steinbrenner back in the day when he used to be famous for not the same, but trading out young, promising players for established, maybe declining stars. There's a lot of debate over that back in his legacy, but and that's just one example. There's plenty that you can go back and look at, and there's always kind of a balance that's struck, I think, in the most successful organizations, where you can treat players like people, and also at the same time recognize when their value's at its peak, and maybe when it's getting close to declining. That's the challenge of the game in any sport, but as an executive anyway, as a GM or as a team president. But heading over to the Nets, which, as you've mentioned, it's kind of interesting that Boston and Brooklyn be kind of linked because of those trades, because of the draft pick swap that we will always remember in those trades with Pierce and Garnett, and, the eras that kind of were catapulted out of both. And now you're kind of seeing a change, I would say, for both organizations dramatically. And we'll see, like you said, I don't think Boston's going to fade away. I think they're still going to be a relevant team. But again, I don't know. It's on another adjustment now that they're kind of retooling. But now that, Brooklyn is rising into the prominence of being a team, not only just a contender to get in, they were 6th seed last year, going in, and now we'll see when KD gets back. But even with Kyrie trying to build off of last year, trying to be one of the better teams in the East, how that transforms. But, Sean Marks and Kenny Atkinson are the two that are given, and rightfully so, a ton of credit for turning this organization into the team that it's becoming, and turning it into this place and destination that, has people saying things like, oh, well, now Brooklyn is the team to go to. It's the free agent destination. Forget just the, where to buy tickets for fans. It's, look what just happened. Kyrie and KD signed, and DeAndre Jordan signed in Brooklyn, and those two have been major architects. And say what you want about the sway of Jay-Z also being in the periphery and those types of things again, I'd say periphery, but either way, how do you think those guys have put the Nets from a team that had no draft picks for a couple years, right? And had kind of bet a lot of chips on older players. We're talking 5-6 years ago now. What role did they play in turning them into a destination?
Well, first of all, Sean Marks is a god. I'm going to have to say, from the moment he stepped in February of 2016, I know this is our man to get this guy out of the hole, get Brooklyn out of this hole that they were in. So he was opportunistic whenever he got the chance to be. He signed Justin Hamilton, a bunch of guys you've never heard of, and flipped them for assets. Justin Hamilton in 2017 was traded for DeMar Carroll to the Toronto Raptors. And you know what Toronto also sent us? A first-round pick in 2018. You know what that turned into? Rodion's Caruth. So Sean Marks has absorbed big contracts with assets to it and just kept going from there. He traded away Bojan Bogdanovic in 2017 for what became Jarrett Allen. And the 2017 flipped pick from Boston and Brooklyn, because they swapped picks because that was the conditions of the KG Pierce trade. He took that pick, which ended up being 27th, and flipped that for D'Angelo Russell. And
Sure.
D'Angelo Russell changed the culture of the Brooklyn Nets. I'll get into that in a little bit. But Sean Marks is just taking these small little deals and made it into something bigger. He took on Kenneth Faried last year, who I thought was going to be a good fit in Brooklyn, but, it didn't end up working out. But what ended up working out from that deal is getting Darrell Arthur as part of that package, and then flipping Darrell Arthur to Phoenix and getting Jared Dudley in. And we know how well connected Jared Dudley is in the NBA. He tweets, a bunch of information that everyday people don't get access to, and he's connected with people.
His own Woj bombs.
Yes, exactly. Jared Dudley is a popular figure in the NBA, whether people want to believe it or not. He knows people. he gets himself around. He has a lot of clout, Jared
Right.
Dudley. And last season for Brooklyn, whenever he was on the floor, he was always a plus. He was always a positive for the Nets. He would be in the right spots to shoot the open three-pointer. He would defend players exactly in spots where they can be stopped. And he would just provide leadership, get this team, like his players, his teammates in the right spots, kind of be an extension of the coach on the floor. He was more important to that Brooklyn Nets team than many people realize. He was an extension of the coach, and in many ways, somebody who played the ultimate role player for the squad. So they were a worse team last season with him off the floor than with him on it. Yeah, the numbers are not going to show that, but he's got that veteran leadership and that veteran IQ that, just helps teams in ways that you just never know. So, what basically I'm trying to say with Sean Marks is he would never say no to an opportunity when it came. He took another chance on Alan Crabb after losing him to a contract match by Portland. Brought him in. It didn't necessarily work out, but it was a gamble that needed to be taken in the 2 years of Brooklyn, the 2 years prior in Brooklyn, because they just were starved for talent. But you know what Alan Crabb ended up turning into? Taurean Prince. And though we gave up a draft pick to Atlanta to take on his contract, the Nets brought in Taurean Prince. He was not a throw-in to that deal. I'll get into a little bit later how Taurean Prince is going to help this team, but he's no throw-in. He's a friend of Kevin Durant. So, Sean Marks always has rebounded from mistakes. And
he's one of my favorites to bring in my GM mode, the one with all the cutscenes in 2K.
But no, Sean Marks though is just a genius when it comes to the front office. Also just bringing in players that were to set a culture in Brooklyn. DeMarre Carroll as well. I've mentioned this before. DeMarre Carroll revitalized his career in Brooklyn. He was kind of left for dead in Toronto, an overpaid veteran, but he came in and provided three-point shooting, stuff that you won't see in the box scores every day, but he became a big part of the Brooklyn Nets team. He would just look for guys that need a new chance. Joe Harris, for instance. Joe Harris became a very solid NBA player. I'll get into him a little more. Spencer Dinwiddie came in. These were guys that were in the G League, getting cut from teams. Guys, afterthoughts. He just found talent in areas where other people weren't looking. So, he just changed his organization overnight, seemingly. Well, it wasn't an overnight thing. There was a lot of suffering and, just a lot of growing pains. He required Kenny Atkinson to run a system that wasn't leading to wins. That wasn't necessarily helping the team in the short term. But his long-term approach was keep running the system. Let's build a culture on the system that Kenny Atkinson's running. It's not going to lead to wins. We're not going to look at these lost picks as a way we're going to dictate our future. There's sunk costs. There's nothing we can do about it. We're going to build a culture from the ground up. Hit the reset button completely, and build the system of 3-point shooting and what fits in the modern day NBA, just like that.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned these players that they've kind of maximized value on, and you and I and your brother, we went and saw some of these guys way back in December, when we went to a Brooklyn Nets game, and I remember you and I talking about Dinwiddie quite a bit.
Yep.
And the things and the adversity he dealt with last season and fighting to get on the floor and the plus player that he was. But now, and it's, obviously, like we've talked about, Durant, you're waiting on him to get back from the Achilles injury. But obviously, Kyrie, as we talked about, should be an upgrade over D'Angelo Russell. There's, the opportunity that DeAndre Jordan has now to be a piece here in Brooklyn. It's how do you think, and I know this is kind of a vague maybe not vague, but it sets the table for a lot of guys. How do you think now that they have these superstar talents on their roster, how do the roles get adjusted for guys like a Dinwiddie, like a Harris holding the place per se for Durant until he's back? Guys like that. I know there's different ways they're going to adjust their rotation, but just in general, just all these players that have kind of found new roles and found a home in Brooklyn. How are they going to take to the fact that not all of them are going to have those same roles now? Some of them will still be very heavily prominent in minutes and in terms of getting the ball, but now that there's a little bit of an adjustment to the personnel and there's more talent in the building. When KD gets back, we're looking more at next season. But just in general, how do you think that affects guys? And what do you kind of think of obviously, if you can afford some of these players that were building their way up to more prominent roles and did build themselves into more prominent roles in Brooklyn, now that some of them might take a bit of a more, I don't want to use the word sheltered, but a little lesser role when Durant's back, when guys like that are back. And how do you think that affects Spencer Dinwiddie? How do you think that affects Harris? How do you think that affects guys like Allen? Just players that, again, have kind of proved that they can handle a bigger role. Maybe ideally, this is the situation they belong in, but still, to those individual players, they're going to say, well, I still want a big role here. Obviously, competition is a good thing, even inwardly on your own roster, but how do you think this affects the not only the on-court performance, which is very valid to talk about, but also the fact that they're going to have to kind of readjust a little bit once that full cast is in place in Brooklyn?
That's a very good question, Tim. Seemingly, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant coming in means less touches for everybody, but sometimes less ends up being more because Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, and Jared Allen, a lot of those guys, they all need to realize that, well, Jared Allen wasn't necessarily somebody who came from kind of humble beginnings. Spencer Dinwiddie was a G League player before coming to Brooklyn, had to find his way into a bigger role, had to really go through coaching and development to get him to the spot. Same with Joe Harris. They get two guys that are kind of out of the league. So they kind of have to realize that Brooklyn is the one that gave them second life in this league. And, now that they're building a championship culture, their touches, they're going to be a little bit less. But this is where the less is more kind of plays into the equation. Joe Harris he plays more to his strengths in a way. Joe Harris is more of a catch-and-shoot kind of three-point shooter. He's not going to get the ball, bring up the floor, draw a pick, and shoot a three. It's going to come from passes off drives. We've mentioned before that Kyrie Irving loves to drive the ball inside the paint. Joe Harris is going to be in the left corner, top of the key, right corner. He'll be all throughout the three-point line. He's going to have to move off the ball as he has done in the past and continue to look for passes for wide open three-point shots or any type of three-point shot really. And Spencer Dinwiddie also just have to continue to be the sixth man that he's been throughout his entire career. Spencer Dinwiddie, he has a little bit of an ego. I'm not gonna lie to you. He thinks he's the best player on the court. He'll let you know how good he thinks he is. But that's what got him. That's what got him to the spot he's in. He's just gonna have to come off the bench, provide the great three-point shooting on a nightly basis that he provides, and be kind of like an extension of Kyrie Irving in those point guard minutes off the bench whenever Kyrie Irving needs a rest. They are going to run sets where Spencer Dinwiddie is going to play with Kyrie, but that's not going to be as often as, like, let's say him and Karis LeVert on the floor together, or Kyrie Irving and Karis LeVert on the floor together. So a lot of pressure is actually going to be on Spencer Dinwiddie here because he needs to provide scoring off the bench. And I think he thrives in that role, being a scorer off the bench. He should have been in the running for Sixth Man of the Year this year. A lot of people thought he was very much in the mix with Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. I forget who the third one is on the top of my head, but you know, whatever the case is, this is his time to come in and show that he can be a six man. I think he'll have no problem adjusting to his new role. He had to defer to D'Angelo Russell a little bit last season as well. He didn't like that. That killed him inside. I know Spencer, at least from a distance, knowing that he thought he might have been better than D'Angelo. So now that he's in a situation where he can his ego can take kind of a step back with Kyrie Irving, player he recruited actually. Kyrie and Spencer have been in conversation since they took a class at Harvard last year, and Spencer's been recruiting him ever since. So I think this is a situation that Spencer will be comfortable in because him and Kyrie Irving have a pre-existing relationship. He knows Kevin Durant's Kevin Durant, so he's gonna come in and do his thing and help bring him a championship in the next couple of years. Once he returns to full health, I'm gonna add that. So personally, I think the Nets just have a culture of selflessness, ball movement, and kind of like the camaraderie that other teams don't have, dancing on the sidelines, the bench dancing whenever they make a 3-point shot.
I love it. I'll say this. I love that anytime I see it on Twitter, that little compilation of all those dances on the sideline, and I've seen it used multiple times now in a lot of different – it's a versatile meme too, which is kind of nice. But I will say that was one of the more entertaining GIFs or memes or whatever you want. It wouldn't be a GIF. It would be – I guess a video meme. I don't know. Compilation, is that its own thing now? But in any case, I have to admit that if there's a well played internet usage out of your team chemistry, that's a good sign.
Exactly. I think there's just camaraderie, chemistry, and continuity on this Brooklyn Nets team that is just going to continue on. Like, losing D'Angelo Russell is kind of a blow to that chemistry, but I think it helps Kyrie Irving actually wanting to be here, and Kevin Durant picking Brooklyn is just, they're going to kind of pick off where they left off. There may be growing pains at first, but, I think they're going to be a better team. But we're going to have to probably switch gears to the Knicks because, our guest is kind of short on time here, so we'll get him on and switch gears to the Knicks a little bit, see what his thoughts are on their offseason, and then, we can always switch gears back to the Nets when the time comes. But let's make this call. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we got a special guest coming on very shortly. I don't know why the call ended. Maybe that was my mistake. But
it's to summarize a recent quote I had during an important interview. Gotta love conference calls. it should be so
you
simple.
There, Vlad?
Yes, it can make things so much complicated.
All right.
It's good, it's good.
All right. So we got Vlad from Monroe, New York. Well,
hey,
I'm
Vlad.
in Monroe, New York as well. So how you doing, Vlad?
Orange County, baby.
Orange County, baby's right. I'm doing good, Samir. I got the day off.
Yeah, of course, man.
Hanging out. Ready to talk some basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. My bad for the delay. Like, we just kind of got sidetracked.
No worries.
No, you got plans, so let's get right into it, man. I remember a couple months ago you trolled my ass when the Nets were losing that game 5 to Philadelphia. You're like, the Nets may never score again. I'm like, well, the Knicks may never make the playoffs again. We got into it a little bit there. You said something very interesting in that exchange.
God.
Kevin Durant was a lock to go to the Knicks. What happened, Vlad? Why did he change his mind, in your opinion?
All right, Samir. How did I know that you were going to bring that up? I thought you were going to maybe wait a little bit, but I see you just jumped right into it.
I couldn't help myself.
For the people listening at home, me and Samir, we've been talking basketball for, over a decade now. So, we bust each other's chops. So that was the game where, what were the Nets down?
They were down like 15-0 at that point, I think.
It was miserable. They were down like, I feel like it was more than that. I feel like it got to like 26-4.
It was like 23-2. That was the score at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking trash, and
I took the humble approach.
I mean, that's our relationship. But what happened with KD going to the Knicks? I mean, it could have happened. It could have happened had he not torn his Achilles. I think there could have still been a chance. But once that happened, he didn't really control his future as much as beforehand. It was more up to Kyrie now. He had more autonomy over where the two of them were going to play since they had the agreement. So once that happened, the Knicks shot at KD was donezo.
Well, then why did new acquisition Bobby Portis say that this was done in months in advance? Kyrie and Kevin Durant going to Brooklyn.
I don't think them going to Brooklyn was done in advance. I think the two of them playing. I mean, it goes back to those leaked videos. Where they showed KD and Kyrie at All-Star break talking to each other. That's when all that speculation began. So I think they knew ahead of time that they were definitely going to play together. But I don't think that they were saying, 100% we're going to Brooklyn. I think that Brooklyn making the playoffs, a lot of guys showing progression. I definitely think that came into a factor as the year progressed. And then Brooklyn became a more realistic destination because, quite frankly, even as a Knicks fan, I can tell you Brooklyn has a more complete supporting cast to put around those guys than the Knicks did.
No, I respect hearing that. I think that's the message I've been trying to get across to Knicks fans for a few years now. But I'm glad that you're finally starting to realize that, hey, listen, like with the Knicks, I like where they're going in many ways. But I think the one obstacle that they're going to have to face for the rest of time, at least right now, is having James Dolan as their owner. I think he's pretty much a cancer to that organization. How he's outcasted Charles Oakley from the Garden, how he tells Knicks fans go root for the Nets if they don't like what's going on here. And, just kind of the moves he makes for the organization. I just don't think that sits well with many former Knicks players and guys that are looking to go to New York in free agency.
Hey, I mean, I totally hear you. Trust me, there is not one Knicks fan who doesn't want Dolan off of the Knicks. We hate him more than you guys can imagine. Him going on Alan Hahn's show, or Michael Kay, rather, and talking about how, I'm hearing from a lot of people that big players want to come here. That was foolish. He came across really, arrogant, and I definitely think that was a bad look. I will say he isn't as involved as of this newest regime as he had been in the past. Like, particularly if we go back to like the Isaiah Thomas era, that was bad when he was getting his, grubby fingers all over, player moves and whatnot. It'll definitely be an obstacle, but I think that with the new front office, with Scott Perry and Mills, I trust Perry a lot more than I trust Mills. Mills is the guy who gave out that awful Tim Hardaway Jr. contract, so I'm still a little bit leery of him, but I think Scott Perry keeps him in check. I think once they see the culture that the Knicks are building with Fizz and Perry, I think the Knicks are showing that they want to be competitive. I think they'll become a more attractive destination in the coming years.
For sure. I can definitely see that happening. It's going to take time. It's going to take patience, and player development, quite frankly. Your franchise player asking out of New York this year wasn't a good look for the immediate future. Obviously, Kristaps Porzingis. He threatened to go back to Europe. So, for this coming free agency, I'm not going to lie to you. That's not a good look. And having a team in Brooklyn, where things are kind of developing, that how they're able to dig themselves out of that hole and, you still get the benefits of being in New York City, ultimately attracted Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And I've been saying this before on this pod as well. I think the allure of Kyrie Irving playing on his favorite team growing up really just shifted him to that direction. If Kyrie Irving grew up a Knicks fan, I mean, we can't control that, obviously. Maybe things would have been different, but if you put those two and two together, I mean, that just made the Nets an attractive place to be for like the foreseeable future right now. But I like
Well,
what
let me interject here, Samir.
For sure,
Vlad, nice to meet you. I am not a Knicks or a Nets fan, so I like to consider myself impartial here. But I've met, I can't say I've met James Dolan, but I've been in the room with James Dolan one time during an internship. I was really mad about it because the next day I would have, if I had been on the clock, I would have been in the same room as Mariano Rivera, and that didn't happen. And I'm a Yankees fan, so I was not happy about that. But James Dolan is a guy. I always think this to myself. I don't know if SUNY New Paltz ever brags about the fact that he's an alumni. I don't know. I don't know how you handle. And like you've alluded to, obviously he's taken, it seems, a little bit of a backseat lately. He's also the owner of the Rangers, and I don't know how hands-on he is there, but it seems like the general hot take consensus around the sports media world has been that prior to Brooklyn, the Nets coming to Brooklyn, I should say, he just kind of rested on the fact that the Garden was the Garden, and guys just wanted to play in New York City, and now that there is another team across town, it seems like they're taking more of the initiative, at least lately, and just kind of stealing these superstars out from under the Knicks. But aside the player development, what do you think this front office for the Knicks can do to kind of to make themselves a destination? Because down the line, not too far in the future, I don't remember if it's 2 years from now. I think it's Giannis Antetokounmpo is potentially the next big fish out there. How do you kind of, and it doesn't have to be specifically him, obviously he would be the big one. That would be a Durant level acquisition. What do you think the Knicks have to do, especially in that front office, if they are taking more of a role, learning from this summer? What do you think they have to do to really create the Garden as being the destination again in New York?
A lot of good points that you just raised, and again, Dolan, we're stuck with him for the foreseeable future. The best that we can hope is that he learns from this. I mean, trust me, June 30th, 2019, that is one of the lowest lows that I have felt as a Knicks fan, watching, the younger brother, the former New Jersey Nets, like you said, take the rug right from underneath us and swoop in and take the guys that we had been dreaming about for, a year. So that was painful. From Dolan's perspective, he needs to do how he operates with the Rangers. He's very hands-off with the Rangers, and the Rangers have, they've shown that they could sustain long-term success. They've made, a Stanley Cup in the recent, past,
and they just landed a big fish themselves in NHL free agency. They landed maybe the biggest fish out there in Artemi Panarin.
The Rangers, they look, I'm not the biggest of the hockey guys, but I know that they had a big offseason. They accumulated a lot of draft picks, and, the future's looking bright for them. As for the Knicks, it might not be looking as bright as the New York Rangers, but I do think that there's a plan that's been laid out. When Perry joined the Knicks front office, he said that he's going to build this thing the right way, build it organically. They're going to take chances on guys. They're not going to get cap locked. They're going to always have flexibility. They're going to work hard, and they're going to buy into the system and change the culture. And I think thus far he stayed true to that. Obviously, they missed out on Durant and Kyrie, but a lot of people this summer have been really coming down hard on the Knicks, and it gets me a little bit hot because recently you had the coaches and GM polls come out, and there was a question, what was the worst move of the summer? And the number one response was the Knicks' whole offseason. That gets me heated.
That's not fair.
When Bill Simmons is on the Ringer putting out clickbait after clickbait of just bashing the Knicks and the offseason and missing out on these guys, that's just low-hanging fruit, man. It's really the Knicks deserve criticism for, some of the things that have happened. Obviously, over the last 20 years, they've made, the second round, one time. Like, it's bad. We get it.
No, yeah. I mean, being a Nets fan,
that.
I've been on the receiving end of Bill Simmons's clickbait garbage. You know, he loves to criticize the Nets, especially after making
Mr.
that trade.
Boston.
So I know how you feel about that. But sticking with
hashtag Knicks for clicks. You know, that's what the Knicks community. That's how. That's what they put on all their articles that they release. It's pathetic, honestly, because a lot of it is just misinformed.
No,
the Knicks offseason, let me talk to you about them. I like what they did as a plan B. I mean, the Knicks of the past, they would have gave Jimmy Butler or Tobias Harris or Kemba Walker, all fine players, but not guys you want leading your team, because those aren't championship alpha dogs. You know, they're not. And giving those guys max contracts would have been a disaster. The Knicks maintained the flexibility. And let me, pause real quick here and say, flexibility, never won, an MVP or a championship or any of that. But as long as you have flexibility, you have hope. Because if you don't have flexibility, you're the Charlotte Hornets, and you're fucked. You know what I mean?
I know, Terry Rozier, that was their response to Kemba Walker. I mean, Terry Rozier's a fine player, but, oh man, they put way too much faith into him.
Well, yeah, let's talk about some of these other teams. You know, they're saying the Knicks had this terrible offseason. We're talking about, like, the Sacramento Kings giving $100 million to Harrison Barnes.
Yeah,
we're talking about the Phoenix Suns giving a 3-year, $51 million contract to Rubio. Minnesota, who did they pick up? Jake Layman. Dallas, they go 4 years on Seth Curry and, Maxi Kleber. Like, these are backups that they're giving 4 years to. The Grizzlies gave Jonas Valanciunas, who, in my mind, is a scrub. They gave him $45 million.
I agree.
These are all, like, non-playoff teams, and they're not making great moves either, I like Chicago adding, like, Thomas Satoransky. I think he's nice, but Thad Young, you're giving him a 3-year contract, making $14 million a year. He's going to be 34, making $14 million a year. Is he going to be a big piece of the next good Bulls team? I don't like any of those moves, And people are saying that the Knicks had this awful offseason. Let's talk about, Julius Randle. He's 24, coming off a year where he averaged 21 points a game, 3 assists, 9 rebounds. Added a 3-point stroke. He only shot at a 33% clip, but that's encouraging. He'll at least take the pressure off of, R.J. Barrett, so he doesn't have to be the primary scorer, right off the bat. And, another one of my favorite narratives of the summer. Oh, the Knicks added another power forward. Such garbage. Let me tell you something about that. They added Marcus Morris, who was primarily playing the 3 when he was on the Pistons a few years back. He shoots 37% from 3. He could easily play the 3. Bobby Portis on the Wizards last year, he was primarily playing center. Julius Randle, when he was on the Lakers, was 50-50 split between power forward and center. The NBA is very positionless these days, and these guys could, switch off from the 4 and the 5, and Morris can play the 3. So a lot of, bad takes from people who are just kind of misinformed to the Knicks. Like I said, the Knicks are low-hanging fruit, so those are just easy things for them to go after.
No, for sure. I mean, the Knicks are an easy target given that they've been bad for pretty much our entire lifetime, and they're in New York. So, you're going to get misinformed fans, sharing their garbage opinions or kind of overlooking things. So I feel your frustration there. But my main concern with the Knicks is that Marcus Morris, great, not great, obviously, but good, very good role player.
I can talk to you about these role players.
I can get, let me just finish my point real fast. I'm sorry. Okay. Obviously can shoot the 3 very well, and provides physicality on defense. But he's known to mix it up with players, especially younger guys like Jaylen Brown last season. They both need to be separated from each other because, they just got into it. So that can very well happen again in New York, given that such a young team, young guys are going to make mistakes. You think him being in their ear like that is going to help them, or is it going to cause, clicks for the wrong reasons in the New York media and dysfunction.
I think Marcus Morris I think he's like a respected veteran around the league. I mean, look at the teams that went after him this offseason. The Clippers and the Spurs. These are two of the most well-respected teams, in the NBA right now. So I think that the instance with Jaylen Brown, I think that was more of a anomaly. I think that he's going to bring a lot of toughness to this team, and I think that's been a theme of what these new acquisitions have been saying. Bobby Portis and Elfrid Payton, they've been saying, we're guys who have chips on our shoulders. We know we're not Kevin Durant, and we know we're not Kyrie Irving, but we're going to come out and we're going to play hard and prove ourselves. We're a bunch of dogs, that's how they put it. And I think Elfrid Payton, he said we're going to be playing grimy this year. And I like that. It's an ode to the Knicks of the 90s team. I want a team that's going to play like they have something to play for, to prove they'emselves. I think they have a pretty deep roster. They obviously don't have probably not any B guys, but they're going to be deep, they're going to be competitive, and you're going to have to earn minutes on this team. And I think having that competition is going to really push Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, and Kevin Knox. I think it's going to push them to compete harder and take the next step.
That's actually what I was going to say. Like, I think adding in these veterans like Peyton, Morris, and Taj Gibson to a certain extent, too, is going to push these guys.
He's a New York guy.
Exactly. Well. I like the Taj Gibson pickup a lot. Working at the NBA, I've watched a lot of Minnesota Timberwolves games this last year. Taj Gibson provides a lot of leadership in that locker room and a lot on the floor. It's kind of an extension of the coach and just the veteran you need out there because he's going to make a smart play from time to time. So
exactly.
I really like the Taj Gibson pickup. But also, I think Kevin Knox is the key here with Marcus Morris.
I agree with you.
Marcus Morris coming in can take some of his minutes. So that can kind of light a fire into Kevin Knox here.
Kevin Knox is definitely the guy I'm looking most forward to seeing if he's going to take a step up next year. He showed flashes, last year in Summer League. Everyone was all over Kevin Knox. Probably set the bar a little too high. He came out a little flat during the year, really had to figure out how he was going to adjust to the NBA. I'm really very much hoping so that he's going to be able to be a little more efficient, show a little something more on defense, rebounding. I think it's very important for him to be a good complementary young piece to Barrett and Mitchell Robinson because I think those are the two guys that they're building around. But Knox could be someone who is another good piece. Because the Knicks they decided they're going to build it the way the Clippers and the Nets have built their teams. They're not going to bottom out for 5 straight years like, say, the Sixers. They got their guys. They're going to develop them. They're going to play hard, build a culture, show that, they're about winning. They're going to come out each night and compete. And when the time comes, the Knicks, they'll have the assets and the cap flexibility to strike when there is, say, a disgruntled star. A lot of people are saying, Giannis, 2021, whoever else, DeRozan, whoever else is a free agent. But people
Kawhi and Paul George,
let's
potentially.
Talk about all the stars who've been traded in the last few years. So many. You don't know who the next stars are. You got Kyrie, Anthony Davis, Kawhi, Paul George. There's always guys that are on the move. You never know who the next disgruntled star is. And quite frankly, all of these big market teams that these players want to go to, they're capped out now. Miami's not really in play for these stars. The Clippers, the Lakers, they got their guys. So the Knicks remain like that destination. So perhaps if Karl Anthony Towns isn't happy in a few years with where the Timberwolves are going, the Knicks could swoop in. It's not all about free agency.
No, I was thinking about Karl Anthony Towns. He's a very interesting guy to me because, he's from New Jersey. I think he actually grew up a Knicks fan instead of a Nets fan. So, that happens, unfortunately. People in New Jersey didn't recognize the greatness of the Nets, so they went to the Knicks. I don't know what their thought process was, but, hey, it is what it is. But, no, I do think Karl Anthony Towns could eventually be in play for the Knicks because, the Knicks are going to have the pieces to potentially engineer trades, local roots, and being a fan, of course, and I think that would be a great get for you guys if you guys could make it happen. Because I personally think that
What what would it
he's a
take?
little bit of consistency away from being a superstar.
What would it take to get Cat? What would the pieces be that would have to go to Minnesota? I'm just curious out of my own.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking right now. The Knicks right now, as things stand, have the third most amount of future first round draft picks over the next 6 years. Obviously, the Thunder have double what everyone else have. The Pelicans have picks, but then it's the Knicks, the Celtics, and the Hawks at 8. So they have draft capital. They have contracts that are, going to be expiring. And then maybe if a guy, which is why I'm saying Kevin Knox is the key. Like, if he could develop and show some promise, he could be a guy who is like the young guy that gets traded. So maybe you get like, a lottery ticket with a Dennis Smith Jr., a Kevin Knox, future picks, and cap flexibility. Take on some of the bad contracts. Maybe, that is what it's going to take. I don't know how many future draft picks it's going to be. 3, 4, I don't know. But the important thing is the Knicks are going to be in play, and there's not going to be a lot of other contenders that are going to have the resources to make a move like that.
No, I mean, definitely always important to keep flexibility, especially with cap space, because you never know what that can lead to. With the Nets, in their case, they would take on veterans that were overpaid at the time,
Right.
and were kind of like at a point where they just weren't seeing much playing time. Teams were trying to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Let's use Damari Carroll as an example here. That can always add another pick to the equation, which helps with team building, because that got them Rodion Krooks as well. So, having cap flexibility always important.
Yeah, and I'll say this. Another thing that, the Knicks have been criticized for that I was kind of on the fence. I agreed with it to some extent. They got some backlash for signing, Wayne Ellington and Taj Gibson rather than acquiring Mo Harkless or Iguodala. So first off, those are the only two guys that got traded with future picks involved. But these picks are so protected, and they're not even until like 2023, 2024, and they're protected. So, like, these are like magic beans, Are we really going to lose sleep over these picks that are likely to be very high or potentially translated to, 2 second-round picks? So that's another thing the Knicks got backlash that I thought was a little unwarranted. I think for the Knicks, it was important to get the right fit of guys, because you need players, think about all of the, attributes for like a team. You need shooting, defense, playmaking, thinking, toughness. The guys the Knicks added, none of them is going to check off all or even most of those boxes. But the guys they added are going to check off a few of those boxes, and importantly, different ones at that. So each of them do something different, and I think that it's up to Fizdale to make it all fit.
I think what intrigues me most is the trajectory here is, again, it seems like parity might be at least a little bit restored to the NBA in this season and the coming seasons. I mean, part of that is Klay Thompson being injured for a good chunk of the year for Golden State, but even then, they lost KD. There's an opening now. It feels like anyway to challenge. And I think if the Knicks were to land a big guy and land a star while also developing some of these players, you could really get a pretty cool. This is strictly from, like I said, not really an unbiased observer, but you might get a little East Coast, West Coast now, because LA's obviously got the Clippers and the Lakers. If the Nets go on the trajectory it looks like they'll be going on it once KD comes back, and if they continue to build in the right direction in the meantime, you could have a 2-team LA, a 2-team New York that would be a lot of fun. And you could even envision a scenario if the Knicks were to say make a couple of moves in the next year or two, maybe 3, and land a Karl Anthony Towns, or if they wait a little longer, maybe an Antetokounmpo, where you could have an Eastern-Western conference finals where you have two LA teams and two New York teams. I'm totally spitballing and throwing around crazy ideas.
That would be great for all the fans. That would be amazing. I mean, all the fans besides the small market fans, they would hate that.
Charlotte might still be upset.
Just imagine Giannis and Kat on the same team though. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great. But I mean, let me add one more thing.
For sure.
So the Knicks, as I've said, they have that flexibility. But I don't think people are realizing just how much flexibility they had. I don't think their window is going to begin for another 2 years. And that's fine because the mainstream media makes Knicks fans out to be impatient. We're not. We're actually extremely patient. We just want this thing built the right way. We've seen so many regimes just try shortcuts, trading all those assets for Carmelo Anthony, signing, Amari, after missing out on LeBron, the Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Courtney Lee squad. Oh my! I hated that team so much. We just want things built the right way, and so far Perry has stayed true on his word that he's going to do that. And I want to tell you guys something. After 2020, 2021, and so in 2 years' time, the Knicks will have R.J. Barrett under contract for $8.5 million. They'll have Knox under contract for $5.8 million. They'll have Mitchell Robinson under contract for $1.8 million. They'll have Brisdakis, and they'll have a few more, first rounders that they're going to add their own, and then they're going to have one pick from Dallas coming up. They're going to have, and the salary cap, it's gone up significantly over the last few years. It was up to 109 this offseason. It might be like 125. So if you include Joakim Noah's stretch provision, as unfortunate as that is, the Knicks are going to be looking at $100 million in cap space to add to R.J. Barrett, who's going to be going into his third year, Mitchell Robinson and Kevin Knox going into their fourth year. Like, they're going to be in position to make a move, I think, in 2 years' time. So that's the hope, that's the window I'm envisioning. And I hope that they stay true to the plan, develop these guys, and, add when necessary, when need be, when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys are definitely on a good trajectory. You're getting in the right vets right now to make it more competitive for minutes. And, guys that have been around like Taj Gibson, he's going to be a good mentor in the locker room. You guys are doing the right things for the most part. But what I will say is that I've seen this story written so many times about the Knicks where, it's definitely looking more promising than it did in the past. I'll say that as well. But James Dolan just always finds a way to screw things up. So.
He does always find a way, but he just keeps his mouth shut and just stays off camera and just disappears. How much more valuable would the franchise be to him, money-wise, Forbes, if the Knicks were like a contender? Oh my goodness! He needs to realize he's costing himself hundreds of millions of dollars just by keeping this team as like a bottom feeder. If they were successful, oh my God, he could be even more rich. Like, I don't understand why he doesn't consider that and just keeps his mouth shut.
I mean, he's stupid, so what can we really say?
He is stupid.
He may have money, but...
Banned for life. We've all been banned for life from the Garden.
I think it's honestly a bad look that he went out and said as soon as Kevin Durant signed with Brooklyn that he was hesitant to sign him to a max contract and didn't offer him a max contract. I just think that shows that he's a sore loser and he's not going to learn from his mistakes.
He is very much so a sore loser. I agree on you on that. That whole saga saying, we weren't sure. I think ultimately, if the Knicks thought that they had a chance, if Perry and Mills thought they had a chance, I think they could have gone, Dolan to sign off on Durant if he was going to come to us. But, that didn't happen that way.
Did you have a thought, Tim?
I was going to agree with that. I mean, I think that's sour grapes in large part. I think when they figured out that it wasn't going to happen, there was going to be some kind of backlash, just saying, oh, well, it didn't, because we weren't interested. And that happens with any type of owner that is involved and has the ego of a James Dolan. That's, I think, generally speaking, what you're going to get. You're going to get some kind of explanation, and maybe at certain points that was actually an idea that was tossed around by the front office, but I don't think anybody's going to be sitting there saying, "Oh, we're we're out on KD. I think maybe you have a limit of what you're actually going to give him, but I don't know. It came across as, and I know this has been said by other people, but it came across as just kind of a sour grapes thing, and you can't help but understand that. But yeah, as an owner, and I agree with you guys, I think that Dolan just needs to allow his people that he pays to handle any and all type of statements, any and all, and not direct it from behind the scenes either. Just let the people in charge and that you're paying do their job. And that's the thing, I think, with any sports ownership group, that you always have to hold your breath as a fan. I mean, I'm a Buffalo Sabres fan in hockey, so I mean, a lot of what you're saying, Vlad, is resonating with me, because the Sabres go through quite a bit of the same. And being up in Buffalo, they're not the same market as New York City, but the fact that they've gone through some of the dysfunction you're talking about, very similar types of. Sometimes it's ownership, sometimes it's other things where they miss out on guys. But in either case, I think patience is always the best way to go about it. It doesn't help that the New York media is the New York media, but I think if you're, and that's the thing I think anybody faces, KD's going to face it in Brooklyn, is when he's back, be ready for that spotlight. In the New York media is unlike any other, I should say. And there's some big markets, even in smaller cities like Boston, like Bill Simmons, you're going to get the scrutiny, but, and I know KD's dealt with that, and I know other superstars deal with that, but I think, like you guys have attested to already, I think it's the patience, it's building the right way, and that, I think, ultimately speaks for itself when you're trying to recruit a free agent or get a guy to come and not only trade for a guy, but also get him to sign an extension, is when you're saying, hey, look, we're here to develop you guys, our players, and run our system, sure, but we want to be able to put out the right message to our players, but also to our fan base, and balance all of that. And it's hard to do that when you have a meddlesome owner. So if Dolan can learn from his mistakes and not be on Twitter virally banning fans and former players from the building for life, I mean, that's...
And calling one an alcoholic, too?
To stop. I don't know. I've heard that, but I don't know. I mean,
no, he called Charles Oakley an alcoholic, pretty much.
Oh, I thought you said, is Dolan an alcoholic?
No. I mean, maybe he is. I don't know.
He might as well be. He's drunk with power. I'll tell you that much.
That's a fair assessment. Yes.
But I want to get your thoughts on Dennis Smith Jr. here, Vlad. I don't know what I really think of him, other than that he's very explosive and kind of has that mindset that he can thrive in New York. I feel like he has that going for him, but his shooting is I'd say mediocre at best.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Dennis Smith Jr. I'm not exactly that high on. When the Knicks passed up on him and took Ntilikina, I was like, you know what? We'll see how it plays out. At least Ntilikina has elite defensive potential. Dennis Smith Jr., he's the flashier guy. He gets all the dunks, but his defense is a little suspect, and his shooting is abysmal. And that's what I thought at the time. And, that proved to be the case, in Dallas. I am hopeful. I think he still has some potential. I think he is probably not a guy I want long-term. I'd rather package him in a deal. But I think with Fizdale, I'm really excited to see if he could maybe take a step forward the way Emmanuel Mudiay did. A very similar guy. Explosive, not a good shooter. But Mudiay had a career year last year. He shot 44%, something like that, and he had never eclipsed 40% in his career. So I'm hoping he could be a little more efficient. I think he'll be exciting. In the meantime, Knicks fans need some excitement. He clearly acts as someone who wants to be there, which is the case with the majority of the team right now, which is always a plus. Like Porzingis, you mentioned him earlier, didn't want to be a part of the team. And that's what it came down to it. So he was going to have to get moved eventually. I want guys on the team who want to be here, who want to prove themselves, who want to represent New York. So I do like that he has that going for him. I'm also, I'm excited to see Alfred Payton. These are guys that are clearly flawed, but Fizdale brought out a career year from Moutier and Noah Vonleh, who we thought Noah Vonleh was pretty much donezo at that point. But they had some nice years, and, they both went to contenders because of it. They went to the Jazz and the Blazers, respectively. So I'm hopeful that Fizdale can develop these guys and boost their trade value.
I mean, there's a lot of expectations coming for Dennis Smith Jr. out of college. People liken him to Russell Westbrook, which I feel like the media likes to do with these athletic types of point guards. They're like, oh, they're doing that with John Morant right now. I feel like they got to lessen that a little bit. But, I think there's potential for Dennis Smith Jr. if he can just, learn how to shoot the three ball a little bit better, especially in today's day and age. And I think that's the same thing for Kevin Knox as well. I think Kevin Knox displays tremendous athleticism. There are times where he can shoot the ball very well, but then there's also a lot of times where he just looks completely lost on the floor.
Yeah. So he's been working apparently with the Knicks shot doctor, as they call him, working on his shot. Keep smart. So they've been working on it for about 6 weeks, I read. We'll see if that translates, into the regular season. You have guys like Brook Lopez who work on their shooting, and it works. And then you have other guys who work on their shooting, and you don't really see improvement. So we'll see what the case is with Dennis Smith Jr.
All right. Got another question for him, Tim?
Oh, I think that about wraps it up for me. I mean, I'm just curious to see how, again, it almost could work to the Knicks' benefit, I think, if the spotlight now is firmly swung on Brooklyn, because it does allow a little more room to kind of grow with errors. If you're the only team in town that's supposed to do anything, not to say that that's what the expectation has necessarily been since Brooklyn's been there, but now that Brooklyn's kind of going to draw I think the more of the attention from the New York media and from the national media, because they have some superstars. Now is the time to build up, just like Brooklyn did. Just like Brooklyn did with, people weren't giving them a whole lot of attention, and they were able to, as Samir and I have been talking about, build out their roster with role players and solid players that kind of found a new home in Brooklyn. That's, now's the time to do it. And just like we've all been talking about, it's kind of, that lends itself, I think, to creating that feel of, hey, this is a place to play, this is the place to be. So I'm curious to see how it pans out. And I think the Knicks, for whatever else has been said, I think the Knicks will be better than what right now people are putting on them. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff juggernaut or anything like that, but I think because of all the now subversive expectation going to Brooklyn or everything else just shifting, I think the pressure's kind of off of them at the moment, and it allows their coaches, and assuming that the higher-ups will allow a little room for error, like I was saying, mainly Dolan, this is a time where you grow your organization and you build yourself up from the ashes.
Exactly. And, from a Knicks fan's perspective, I'm looking forward to watching this year. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys work hard, leave it all on the floor, play with chips on their shoulder, because at the end of the day, it's all the losing that'll make the winning feel that much sweeter when it actually happens.
For sure. Trust me. I know that feeling right now. All the highs and lows, once they finally just get it and move in the right direction, everything just kind of culminates into one. You kind of laugh at, the hard times, like with the Stephon Marbury era. And then, Carmelo Anthony, that era definitely had its flaws, but it wasn't nearly as bad as,
It wasn't bad. It was,
it was
I'm
flawed.
looking in my basement right now. I still got a framed photo of Carmelo and Amari. I think about what could have been.
I know. No, seriously. I think about that Darren Williams all the time. I remember, that era. I used to try to, convince myself that he still got it. He still had elite ability, up until his last year in Brooklyn. But as soon as he was bought out, I'm like, all right, it's time to move on. It's time to just build this thing from the ground up.
I understand.
And, you know, that got us Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving at the end of the day. So
I'm envious of you, Samir. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wish it had been the Knicks who had built their team up this way.
nah, bro, no, I totally feel that. You know, like I kind of feel for you guys at the same time. I remember throughout the year, you know, all Knicks fans would be like, "Oh, Kevin Durant's coming to us." You know, who cares about Kristaps Porzingis? You know, he's a snake because he didn't want to be here. You're getting Kyrie, Kevin Durant anyway. You know, if I was a Knicks fan, just be in their shoes. I mean, I laugh at it as a Nets fan. I love to troll you guys about it, but you know, at the end of the day, I know what it feels like just to have those emotions hit home.
Yeah, NBA Twitter likes to go for the low-hanging fruit, go after Knicks fans. But at the end of the day, if you're gonna critique us for being passionate and excited about the prospect of potentially getting two of the best players in the NBA right now, so be it. I'll die on that hill. That's fine with me.
Of course, at least like a team, let's say the Charlotte Hornets. Like you could be much worse. Like you have no hope whatsoever, especially if Michael Jordan is your owner, pretty much. I don't know what is he their owner? Yeah, he is. Yeah, so like how he runs the ship there, getting in Terry Rozier to potentially fill in for Kemba Walker, and then like nobody wants to go there, you know.
There's a lot more teams like that around the NBA. So right now, I'm content with where the Knicks are at and where they're going, and I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for this coming year. I think they're gonna surprise some people.
And I'll say this: New York basketball is a lot more fun when both teams are good. Like that applies for every situation in New York. Like if the Yankees and Mets are both good, you know how much fun the Subway Series would be.
Oh God!
Of course.
Bring it back. Let's run it back.
I don't remember the last time both the Knicks and Nets were good, but I'm sure that it would be pretty cool.
Well, I mean, 2012, 2013, our senior year of high school, like, you know, they weren't great, but you know, it was still exciting to see them go to battle. Like, there was definitely.
I agree with you, and I think back on that Knicks team very fondly. We had Jason Kidd. Rasheed Wallace made an appearance. Prigioni, Steve Novak. That was one of my favorite teams for sure.
Oh no, I mean.
But I'm looking forward to this coming team. I think that they're going to play hard and they're going to be gritty, and that's all I could ask for.
Oh, of course. I mean, with the rebuilding team, my biggest gripe with Knicks fans for this season, I'd say, is that they were two steps ahead of where they wanted to be. Like they were hoping for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to sign in a situation where it just wasn't the most stable yet. Like they didn't really show. They didn't show any progress in their development.
Yeah, they didn't have enough quality NBA pieces. If you look at the Nets, Dinwiddie, I don't like the guy as a person because he trolls the Knicks all the time on Twitter. I like him as a player. Karis LeVert, he's like a Swiss Army knife. He could do everything. Joe Harris, 3-point champion. I like him too. Jared Allen, he's like a poor man's Mitchell Robinson, but that's not so bad. So the Nets had a capable roster, and that's ultimately why they were able to land Kyrie and KD.
And, the beauty of what the Nets were at with Dinwiddie, with Joe Harris, they were kind of afterthoughts at one point in their careers. Nobody would want them on their team. Spencer Dinwiddie was toiling away in the G League. The Nets just kind of brought him in. We're like, all right, compete for minutes with Isaiah Whitehead and, go from there. And then Joe Harris comes in, compete for minutes with Sean Kilpatrick, and we'll go from there. So they really grinded and worked hard through ups and downs to kind of get to where they're at. Spencer Dinwiddie, skills challenge champion. I mean, obviously it's not as good as an MVP or a ring, but I mean, coming from nothing to that, and Joe Harris, a 3-point champion, just kind of shows that if you get yourself into the right situation and, kind of keep the integrity up and a team sees that in you, it's never too late. I think that's what the Knicks should kind of look to do. They should look to be kind of opportunistic like the Nets were, take on vets, through trades that can get them another asset, or sign a guy from the G League like Alonzo Trier.
Yes.
Good potential there. Like, the scouting is key at the end of the day.
The scouting is key. I agree with you. I do think that the Knicks have some good prospects. It's a young team with some veterans, so I think they'll gel nicely. And I like what you said about this past year with the Knicks. They were 2 steps ahead of themselves. They're too focused on the destination, where they kind of let the journey bypass them, and ultimately that's why they're where they're at right now.
Exactly. I don't think it helps to be delusional as a fan. Trust me, I was there. I remember in high school, I was delusional about the Nets getting LeBron.
Did you say preschool?
Yeah, I remember those days. Tim, you should have seen
I said high
this guy.
school.
He was salivating over Dwight Howard joining up with Darren Williams. Pathetic.
Well, I mean, that was actually going to happen, but then Dwight Howard was stupid. But I'm glad it didn't happen because I'm happy we stuck with Brook Lopez for that time because as bad as we were as a team,
he ended up becoming D'Angelo Russell.
Exactly. And then D'Angelo Russell, I think his performance and his rise to stardom in Brooklyn kind of opened up doors for the Nets as a destination because it just showed that they were patient and they took chances on players and they got an all-star out of that process and kind of exemplified the system they run. Like that's why you got to take chances on players like that. Damaged goods. Like Dennis Smith Jr. could be a prime example of that. He really shows progression in New York. Like that can open up doors for free agents down the road. But what I need to tell you Knicks fans, I mean, you seem to get it, but a lot of others don't. Be patient. Just because you play in the Garden or you play in the Mecca in New York City doesn't automatically mean that players are going to line up and play for James Dolan.
Trust me, I'm right there with you. I wish all fans could be as rational and logical as I am, but that's okay. We're gonna be fine as a Knicks organization, as a fan base. We'll be fine.
Exactly.
Real quick. Look west here for a sec. I know we've been talking Knicks and Nets, but obviously the other splash has been out west with the Lakers and landing AD, the Clippers getting Kawhi and Paul George, and as we OKC trading for all the first round picks for the next 10 years. But real quick, who goes farther? Both of you guys, who goes farther? LA, which LA team? You can pick one of those two or Golden State.
I think that the Lakers ultimately will be the team that gets eliminated first. I like the Clippers to come out of the West, but don't sleep on Golden State. A lot of people are sleeping on Golden State. I think Golden State, once they get back Klay Thompson, nobody's going to want to play them in the playoffs. But I like the Clippers because Kawhi, the board man's too good.
I mean, yeah, Kawhi is just obviously I mean, he took the words right out of my mouth there, but I think the Lakers actually have something special going now that they got Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins potentially finding himself after that Achilles tear. I mean, it's tough, but I think being a year further removed from that surgery and being in a situation with LeBron that can bring the best out of each and every guy is really going to help him this year. And he's going to be back with Rondo, who he's had much success with during his career and stops in Sacramento, New Orleans. I think, DeMarcus Cousins last year showed that he can still be explosive and a threat whenever he's right. But last year was a growing pains type of year for him because, working his way back from an injury like that and playing in a system where he wasn't really prioritized. And now that he's back with familiar people and Anthony Davis and Rondo, I think it's really going to help him. Anthony Davis coming really speaks for itself. LeBron will be a year older, but LeBron, I know you don't really like him, but I think, he's a top 2 player of all time. I don't want to get into the whole Jordan-LeBron debate, so I'm going to leave it at that. No, but
yeah, I hear you on that. I think that.
But I think he'll figure out a way.
Lakers have a very interesting squad. They got the mean team with Rondo and Cousins and the rest of them. I'm looking forward to see how they gel because I don't know. I'm just not sold that they're going to be this powerhouse right away. I think there's going to be some growing pains along the way. And I think it'll be the biggest key for them will be managing LeBron's workload during the regular season and keeping Anthony Davis healthy, because as LeBron gets older and has more miles on those legs, and we know how fragile Anthony Davis is, I'm not so sold on the rest of their depth to carry them. So it'll be important to keep those two guys healthy.
I mean, the same argument can be said for Kawhi and Paul George as well.
I like their depth a lot. I like their depth a lot more than I like the Lakers.
I mean,
to be honest with you.
I do like Lou Williams coming off the bench. I do love Montrezl Harrell, Landry Shamet. Those are all very good pieces to have off the bench. But the Lakers can counter. They have Kyle Kuzma. They got Avery Bradley coming off the bench now, who's good defender.
Avery Bradley's kind of we'll see what he does, because he's been kind of dormant the past few years.
Yeah, but I think now, being in a new situation, this will bring new life out of him. Defense rarely ever goes away. Good, especially being in your 20s still. I think he's still going to bring a lot on that end, and a lot of three-point shots will open up for him because defenses are going to be so focused on stopping the main guys. So I think he'll provide some value there. Don't forget about Danny Green as well.
I like Danny Green. Tim, what do you think? Let me hear how you rank these three teams.
I think on paper, the Clippers make a ton of sense for the reasons you guys just detailed, because of their depth, because they were the team they were last year, and then added Kawhi and Paul George. And I think they're going to be now that they're, Ballmer's all fired up, they're putting together a completely privately funded new stadium now. So all these things are happening for that part of L.A.
Their defense is going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's if the just like any team, if they stay healthy, I think the Clippers are going to give it a real run. But I don't, and I'm not a huge LeBron fan from the perspective of I just love everything he does. But I mean, I'm going to give him his respect. He to me is the prime type of just elevate the talent around him type of guy, and that's why when they've done the super teams before, you get guys like that are mostly buried on most benches elsewhere come to him and are effective in the role that they play, because they accept it and they play to exactly what they're told to play within whatever system LeBron wants to run and whatever the coach echoes with LeBron. But I agree. Those three are going to be the powerhouses. I think the Clippers are going to it just seems like everything's falling their way right now, and I know it's the off season, but I think they're at that perfect merge of, okay, they got the superstars. They're able to get the Thunder to just blow it up. And I know everyone keeps bringing up the Lillard shot is you ended an organization, basically. And even he, I think, tweeted something about it. But I think those are the three, along with the Warriors, to watch. I think the Rockets, I was going to ask you guys this next.
Are we sleeping on the Rockets and the Jazz and the Nuggets? Are we sleeping on those next three teams?
Do not sleep on the Nuggets.
I'm worried about the Rockets because they reunited Westbrook and Harden, but I don't know that it's a great thing. I mean, everyone talks about how they're both ball dominant, and I don't know. I just, I worry about that and the fact that it's just, to me, I don't know. I don't know about them working in seamlessly together. I don't know it'll work some nights for sure. I mean, the talent is there, but I don't know. I think the chemistry might not always hold up. I mean, we've seen Westbrook kind of be a volatile guy. We've seen Harden be a volatile guy, and I worry about that combo. But no, the Jazz and the Nuggets, I mean, those are two I think you can't count out either. I mean, I had what's his name, Joker, over on my fantasy team this past year, and he did well for me. I think I forget, Samir, were you in my league? I can't remember if that was the league I was in with you, but I went pretty far, I think, on him alone.
Yeah,
we need to add 10 to our league.
Yeah, if you want to come through, join our league.
Yes. I don't pretend to be the foremost basketball expert, but for whatever reason, I tend to go pretty far in the playoffs in fantasy basketball. I usually lose really painfully. I think 2 or 3 years ago I was in a league and I lost the championship by, I think, 0.5. I think it was literally 0.5 points, and I think it was my buddy's league back in New York. But I find I am the Buffalo Bills of losing fantasy championships. I find the most excruciating
I'm a Bills fan, so careful with that comparison. That strikes home.
Hey, I'm a Giants fan. I can't say I'm pleased with what they're going right now.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's oh boy, that's a whole nother can of worms if you want to go there. And the Daniel Jones' era is coming.
Let's save that. Let's save that for another day.
I understand.
But no, with the Rockets, I think they're going to be a very fun team to watch. Just on virtue of having Russell Westbrook and James Harden on the floor at the same time. But I'm not convinced that's going to lead to winning basketball on a nightly basis. I think it's good that they got Chris Paul out of there because, in my personal opinion, Chris Paul is one of the most overrated and overappreciated players that I've ever seen. So, I think he's way past his prime. Get him out of there. At least bring some exciting basketball back to H-Town. And, I think there's just going to be a team that's going to shoot the three ball continuously very well. Going to set records in the regular season with their three-point shooting like they always do. But when it comes time to the playoffs, there's going to be smarter teams out there like the Clippers and potentially the Lakers, the Nuggets. They're just going to take them out.
The West it's really something. I mean, when you think about it, those are all really, really good teams. The 6 that we named, 2 of them are going to lose in the first round.
I know, that's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
The Blazers are going to be in that mix, obviously.
And don't forget about the Blazers. They have a lot. I like teams with continuity. That's why I like the Nuggets. That's why I like the Jazz. That's why I like the Blazers too. They add 1 or 2 key pieces, but for the most part, their rosters remain the same. That's why I'm leery about. I think the Lakers could just get upset potentially in potentially the first or second round. I think that they're not going to be like a 60-win powerhouse 1 or 2 seed team. I think that there's going to be growing pains.
I could very much see that.
Especially if an injury occurs. If an injury occurs.
Yeah, if LeBron or Anthony Davis gets hurt in the early part of the season and where they're out for an extended period of time, there are going to be some games that they lose. So, especially in the Western Conference.
And it's going to hurt in terms of building chemistry if one of those guys misses, 10, 20 games.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that, but this team is ultimately going to be judged on what they do in the postseason because at this point in LeBron James' career, we all know what type of player he is. We all know, he's one of the greatest all-time players. That's all pretty much a given. But now, if he wants to continue his legacy and add to it, whatever happens in the postseason matters a lot more than what he does in the regular season. Look at Kevin Durant, for instance, quite honestly. His 2 years in Golden State, he missed over 10 games and was out for a month towards the end of the season, but got himself healthy in time for the playoffs and went off and won 2 consecutive finals MVPs. People forget about the part that he missed time, but people remember that he got 2 finals MVPs and 2 rings and made that team unbeatable.
Yeah, totally agree with you there.
So I mean, it's
gonna be a fun year. It really is.
I look forward to it. This is the most fun the NBA is gonna be since 2007.
Yeah. Oh, and again, it's the parity too. It's just that you don't book the the Warriors like you have the last few years. I mean, as good as the West has been behind them, it's just a cheat code when in the last couple of seasons when you go up against them. We saw the Rockets almost unseat them, and then Paul goes down, and then this past year they pull it off again with KD before he blows his tire in the finals. But I'm excited because I think one, you're going to see another new champion this year. I don't think it'll be as Golden State's going to be tough out for sure. I don't know that Toronto, obviously losing Kawhi, is going to be repeating, but obviously it's just a matter of. I mean, hey, there's Milwaukee in the East. I mean, there's a couple of teams on the rise,
Milwaukee and Philly for sure are going to be title contenders.
Right. Oh, and Samir, I know you know Milwaukee well from your work and having to log a lot of those games.
Yep. Oh my God, Giannis just seeing that firsthand, dude. That was just crazy. Every night he'd do something or another that just made you go crazy as a fan. if I was a free agent as an NBA fan last season, the Bucks would have been my team. Just the way they move the ball, Giannis getting into the paint and dunking with ease, just so automatic, and all the pointers they shoot, the continuity and the likability the guys have with each other. Like, losing Brogdon is going to be huge for them, but I think they're going to be fine because they added Wesley Matthews, Kyle Korver, and George Hill's coming back, and he can kind of, carry some of the load that Brogdon left behind with him. So I think they're going to be right back in the mix. Giannis is going to be a whole nother year more mature and, hungry to get that ring. So, the Bucks, I fully expect them to be right back in the mix, and they can honestly potentially beat the Clippers or the Lakers or any team from the West in the finals.
Well, exciting season to come. If you were to pick one team right now, then because I'll end my sentiment here on basketball with this. I don't want to cop out. I don't want to just say, the Clippers because they won the offseason or co-won the offseason. I want to lean towards Milwaukee just because even though there's the West is just, as you guys were talking about, it's an absolute jungle in terms of every man for himself because there's so many good teams. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see it, especially if Antetokounmpo is going to be leaving in a couple years for free agency. I mean, you never know. Maybe they pull off an extension, but it is a smaller market team in Milwaukee, and it's a team, like you were saying, Samir, it's fun to watch. I know they have some issues. They want to be a little bit better shooting the ball, and there's some things that they absolutely need to clean up if they want to make that run. But I'm going to be subversive, and I'm just going to say they magically hit the run there. And I know it's not that much of a stretch, but it is a little bit, but not like I'm picking some dark horse from the bottom of the playoffs things. But I'm gonna say I'll pull for Milwaukee to pull it off this year, just for those same reasons, and just because again I like the parity. I want to see somebody else, just like Toronto did this year, make a run.
All right. How about you, Vlad?
Championship pick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too early, like the early one. Obviously, it could change.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, I do like the Bucks coming out of the East. I don't think the Sixers are going to be able to beat them. Maybe though, I don't know. I like the Bucks. I think they're a deeper roster, and I think Giannis. I think if you saw the leaps he has made from year to year, it's going to be scary what he does next year. If he has a 3-point shot, it's over.
Oh yeah, dude, that's what they're saying all year.
So I mean, if I was betting it, I would probably bet on the Bucks just because you know that they're going to at least make the conference finals. Because I don't think there's that many true contenders in the East.
Right.
The West is, as Tim alluded to, it's going to be a dogfight out there. And I know that it's a boring pick to say Clippers because of the offseason they had, but I just love that defense. And they have Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi, and Montrezl Harrell. They're gonna be so good defensively. They're gonna stymie teams. They're built for the playoffs. Kawhi is a killer. Paul George is really, really good as well. These are two guys. These are MVP candidates. And Doc Rivers, good coach who's been there before. I really think that they'll gel easier than the Lakers. I really like the Warriors. I've always enjoyed watching them play, their ball movement and stuff. But their roster it's not as deep as these other rosters. So I'm going to go with Clippers, Bucks, generic pick, but give me Clippers over Bucks in 7.
Like that pick, I'm not going to change or reinvent the wheel here. I got the Bucks going to the finals. Just because of Giannis, and I don't think the Sixers are well built enough to go to the finals, maybe the Eastern Conference Finals, but I just think Milwaukee's just going to be a whole nother year together. The pieces are right there for them. Amazing 3-point shooting. You get good rim protection from Brook Lopez. That's a very underrated part of what he brings to them. People like to hate on the fact that he doesn't rebound, but you know what? his boxing out creates rebounding opportunities for other players on the Bucks. People don't realize that. So, on the boards they're gonna be aggressive, and they just got great personnel for 3-point shooting. So Bucks coming out of East, and I'm gonna be bold here. I'm gonna say it's gonna be the Lakers coming out of the West.
Okay.
I'm gonna be bold.
Okay.
I'm gonna
I
be
say
bold.
the Jazz over Lakers in the second round. That's my
I mean, it's
bold prediction.
possible, but I just can't bet against LeBron.
In the maybe first round 4-5 matchup, disappointing and first year of LeBron and AD. Bold dark horse prediction for you guys.
I mean, it's not impossible, but we'll see. Anyway, Vlad, thank you for coming on. Great talking hoops with you always, especially being you're a Knicks fan, I'm a Nets fan, leads to some good banter. We'd love to have you on in the future.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. I had a lot to get off my chest. I was hot from all of this Knicks criticism over the past month, so it was nice to talk some basketball. I'm looking forward to the year, and I'll definitely come on. You guys just tell me the time, tell me the place. I'll be there.
Yeah, for sure. Next time, come through here. I just need to get a lot about the Nets off my chest, and I just didn't want you to sit here and just be bored. So I was just I gotta get this Nets stuff
we'll
off.
catch a game as well, Samir.
Hell yeah, we gotta. We'll set it up during the regular season.
All right, guys.
Yep.
Good talking, guys.
Yep. Thanks, Vlad. That was Vlad Dovgan of Monroe, New York. Great friend from, my childhood. We've known each other for a long time now. Always talk hoops. A little backstory on Vlad. He might address this the next time he's on the air. He was actually a Heat fan when he first started getting into hoops. He was a Dwayne Wade and Shaq guy. He loved that team.
I thought you were going to say because of the big three.
Oh, no.
Made the decision. I was going to say, that's not fair. You bring that up after he leaves. But no, that's actually cool. No,
and I was a New Jersey Nets fan, obviously. When his Heat took out the Nets in the playoffs, I was salty, and he was talking all shit. I'm like, look, why don't you root for a local team or something? Why do you got to go root for Dwayne Wade and Shaq down in Miami? Root for Vince Carter, Jason Kidd, just like me. That's my squad. When the Nets win the finals, Kyrie Irving's going to say, thank you, Jason Kidd. And maybe Vince Carter. But I know Kyrie Irving primarily grew up a Jason Kidd guy. So can't wait for that to happen. My finals prediction would have included the Brooklyn Nets if Kevin Durant was healthy. But I got to be fair. I think Milwaukee, next year, they got what it takes.
Yeah.
But no, I mean,
give Brooklyn a year. Give them a year. Let them get healthy.
But I mean, it's good to have Vlad on as a Knicks fan. Gives a different perspective. Humanizes Knicks fans a little bit. I always enjoy talking hoops with him, even though there's a lot of trash talk in between.
Switch gears with me here a little bit, Samir. I know the baseball's kind of been in the periphery for both of us. You for the fact
I'll switch gears with you anytime.
Yeah, well, here we go.
You get the joke, right?
Each other catch up because we're both Yankees fans. We've both been following, but we've both been pulled in 85 different directions because of work and because of other major events in the sports landscape. I know that's going to make me sound like the biggest bandwagoner, but it's not. Normally I'd be listening every day on the maybe not every day, but regularly on MLB's mobile app because they let you listen radio wise. But I've been having issues with that out here in Nebraska. It doesn't have the same access. I don't know. I got to figure out what the hell I'm doing wrong, but I can't get the same stations online as I used to, so I don't know exactly what I'm doing wrong or if they've changed some things. But in any case, the Yankees are coming up on the trade deadline. The Yankees right now, you could make a case is it's them and the Dodgers and then everybody else. In my mind, I mean, obviously Houston's really good, and I'm leaving a couple teams out. Tampa's had a good year, but they just lost Blake Snell. There's some really solid teams coming up and chasing. Minnesota's been really good. Obviously, the Yankees just had a wild series with them.
God.
That game the other night, I was following on my phone. I couldn't get the live broadcast, but the back and forth between the fact that when I've been following, which has really been religiously now more the last month, since the end of June is when I've really started to follow the Yankees in the limited capacity that I can online, just going into the Gamecast and watching on there and getting the Twitter updates. It's a bit of a roller coaster, and it's kind of wild because the bats just keep delivering. And I know that's not the most sustainable way for success, but it doesn't seem to matter what's been thrown at the Yankees this year thus far, pre-trade deadline. They've had every player just about on the lineup get hurt. A good chunk of the rotation. They've had bullpen issues with health. Everybody's been thrown through the ringer, and yet the Yankees keep winning, and they keep just pulling out series. And it seems like they lead the league in comeback victories. After that crazy Minnesota game the other night, I believe it was 32 come-from-behind victories, which leads the majors. To me, they seem like a team that you could pencil in right now as a team of destiny, at least in the AL, because you have other teams struggling. But I'm worried because as this talk heats up with the Yankees adding pitching at the deadline, it seems like their starting rotation is deteriorating right in front of us. Tanaka's having issues all year. We've talked or seen issues just with consistency in the rotation. Domenico or Herman, I believe, is the right way to say it, and I should know that because he and I were in Scranton for the last few years. Prior to this year, I should know how to say his name, but he's been one of the best guys on the team in terms of consistency in the rotation, but he's dealt with injuries. So you're talking about the Yankees making these moves, and it seems like the starters are not focused. It seems like, I don't know if it's just coincidental or the fact that they're all kind of holding their breath to see who's being added to the rotation. I don't know, but the Yankees have given up 40 runs. Their starters have given up 40 runs in the last 5 games. I saw the stat from, I think it was Buster Only this morning. It might have been another one of the MLB writers. 40 runs in their last 5 games, which is the first time, I think, for the Yankees since 1912. Might even just be overall in major leagues, but I'm worried. I'm worried that the pitching is deteriorating right at a crucial point of the season. Yes, the Yankees have a nice little lead in the AL East, but you're going to try to get some help here. Cashman needs to make a move. I know they're trying to keep Garcia, I believe, right? Devi?
Yep.
Who's kind of ascended to the top of their prospect rankings. He's had an unbelievable year. His stuff is filthy. He's like a smaller than Pedro Martinez, but he's absolutely filthy in his Ks. His strikeout rate, he had like a combined no-hitter or 6 no-hit innings earlier, about a month and a half ago now. He struck out like 14 guys or 12, 13 guys in 6 innings. He's been unbelievable, and he's at the start of every trade conversation. And the Yankees are including Clint Frazier in every trade conversation because it's apparent that he's no longer a fit, despite being able to hit pretty well. And now just sitting in Scranton waiting to get a chance again at the majors. Samir, I know I've been rambling, but what do you think the Yankees do here in the next week? What do you think they need to do to kind of fortify and make this team a legitimate World Series contender?
Well, first things first, I think they got to bring in Marcus Stroman, local kid. I feel like he'll thrive under the pressure and the bright lights of being a New Yorker because he is from New York. I think his stuff is electric when he's on top of his game. Many people view him as like a mid-rotation guy. I think that's incorrect. He has below a 3 ERA this entire year. He's doing it on a crappy team with no run support to speak of. So I think, he'll thrive in New York just on the virtue of being from here. His confidence is sky high. He has a deep hatred of the Boston Red Sox. You need that swagger in this locker room, in this clubhouse. You need that guy. He's a transformational guy, just like on virtue of his presence. So I think they need to go out and get him. Who cares who we give up? I mean, obviously no Glaber, but with prospects, I'm okay with letting go Clint Frazier, anybody really. None of the everyday players, of course, but I am more than okay with giving up who we need to give up to land him. I think, honestly, he might be a better fit for the Yankees than Madison Bumgarner. I think Madison Bumgarner, great pitcher, obviously. His resume speaks for itself. Obviously Madison Bumgarner is a better pitcher. I'm not going to argue that, but it's going to be more expensive to get him. I think the Giants are leaning towards keeping him anyway. So
it looks like they're turning into almost buyers now at that. They've been hot lately.
Exactly. So I think Marcus Stroman just makes the most sense for this team. I do not want Trevor Bauer anywhere near the Yankees. I can't stand him. I was at the game where the Yankees lit him up in Game 4 of the ALDS a couple years ago. I was the happiest guy on the planet. I can't stand him. I could not stand him. He gets jealous of people around him. He didn't get along with Garrett Cole when they were both in college because he was jealous of him. I don't want that type of energy in this clubhouse, this locker room.
He's one of the guys that's an outspoken political guy, and,
yep.
and
his political views don't align with us.
Mm-hmm. And I just, and I'm not one of those guys that's like just stick to baseball, but the things that he says politically do not line up with what I believe. And while I believe in everybody's right to express their political beliefs, to add that to what you're saying in terms of his personality and the fact that he's not a great team guy, it seems, from what has been said about him and some of the actions he's had in his career, I wouldn't be overly thrilled to add him either. I think, yes, he's a talented pitcher, but to me, I would prefer Stroman. I think at this point, he's a little bit inconsistent in his career. He's been kind of an every other year guy since 2016. It seems like in the even years he's pretty off, and in the odd years he's pretty good. And like you said, Toronto, especially this year, has been pretty brutal. They're just not a good baseball team. He's a very expressive guy out there on the field, especially against Boston, which I do like quite a bit. I've seen some of those clips of him when he strikes out Red Sox and he's all fired up. Sign me up for that. And I know Toronto is asking a big price, and they should. I mean, in all honesty, they're not doing their jobs if they're not asking for a big sell, especially trading him in division. But at the same time, I mean, this is now the point where you can start to transition, I think, if you're Brian Cashman, into more the old era Yankees. And I understand it's not going to be the old era Yankees where price is no object. I know Hal Steinbrenner's much more budget conscious, but you can start trading off prospects now. You've established yourself as a big dog in the AL again. Your young guys have made it up. Judge has turned into a franchise hitter if he, assuming injuries don't become a regular part of his routine. And this is really the big time where he's this year's been the issue, and now he's been back to full health now for over a month, and he's playing really well. Gleyber Torres has been phenomenal. The depth that the Yankees have put together has been nothing short of incredible this year, and it's just one of those years where everything seems to be lining up. Do I think Tauchman and Urshela and those guys are going to continue to play to the level they've played to this year? No. I think they're still quality guys, don't get me wrong. I just think to me right now, the way things are lining up with the players that are outperforming their traditional career standards, along with your stalwart players, your Didi Gregorius is now back and healthy. Unfortunately, Gary Sanchez and Gardner are both on the IL right now, but you'd expect them back later. It just seems like this is the year that you got to go buy in. And I know in the past couple recent years, the Yankees have been a bit tentative at the deadline, and they're still kind of cultivating those young players now that a lot of those guys are up and have arrived and have defined themselves as franchise cornerstones. The guys I just mentioned. Now's the time to start buying and start buying big. I mean, the other name that we didn't discuss in that group of names we just threw out there is Noah Syndergaard. Remember last summer during this time, I was all for some controversial trades. I know you and I had a bit of a Twitter debate even over the idea of trading a couple of cornerstone pieces I just listed in Gleyber and Miguel Andujar, who's obviously dealt with his own issues this year injury-wise, but for two stalwart pitchers in DeGrom and Syndergaard. Now, DeGrom is still DeGrom, but he's pretty much untouchable, and the Mets don't like doing business with the Yankees anyway. But Syndergaard has struggled. I don't think the Mets are still all that willing to do any business with the Yankees, but if the price was right, Samir, I don't know. I think if you could get away with maybe not giving up Garcia, but Clint Frazier and another mid-tier prospect and change, I'm kind of thinking I might do that deal just because Syndergaard, the Mets obviously are not a good team this year. They've got some nice young players here and there, but they've struggled mightily all year. Give him some run support. Give him a new ground. I'm willing to to gamble a little bit there if I can't get Stroman. He wouldn't be first on my list, but Syndergaard, you know the talent he's got. I know he's had some attitude concerns this year. He's kind of been, he's pissed off some of the Central New Yorkers we all love, knowing well from our college days. He kind of took a little bit of a shot at Syracuse earlier this year, and had to kind of do some PR to make up for that. And look, I mean, I'm willing, if the price is right, to make a move. And I know the Mets, they don't like doing business with the Yankees, but I don't know that they're in a spot at the moment to be overly picky if they can get some good young pieces in for trading a guy like Syndergaard. And Zach Wheeler's in that discussion as well, but he's kind of been up and down pretty much his whole career. He's shown some really nice stretches, and I know lately he's been a little inconsistent as well. So I don't know. I know we're probably on the same page with who our ideal target is out of all those names, but I don't know, what would you be willing to do to get a guy like Syndergaard in the building? Because keep in mind, when this guy is right, the dude has ace material. I mean, you could say that about a guy like Garrett Cole. Look what his transformation has been since going to Houston. I mean, prior to that, he had some ups and down issues as well. I'm just throwing one name out there, but now that he's on a contender, I mean, he's shown some flashes with Houston where he's been dominant. Look at last year as an example, so I don't know. I think no matter what, I would love one starter and one quality reliever, because I don't know what's up with Aroldis Chapman right now. But God help me, when I flip on a game, when he's trying to close out a game, maybe it's just me being a jinx. Maybe it was that report that came out a couple of weeks ago, like last week, about how he's definitely going to opt out, and then he came out publicly said, and that's completely false. He just seems off right now, and we've seen Chapman when he's off, and it's not a pretty sight. So all of that, I know I'm ranting, I know I'm rambling, but all of that I want, and the Yankees want it too. They want to add a couple arms to that pitching staff to close this out and make this a World Series team, because LA's waiting. You know they're waiting. You know they're pissed because they didn't win last year. They folded to Boston. You know they're juggernaut right now in the NL. What's the limit? What's the limit to what you're willing to give up to put the Yankees in a situation to compete with the Dodgers?
Well, I'm willing to give up any prospect not named Gleyber Torres, even though Torres is no longer a prospect. Keep your hands off Torres, Judge. Obviously, I don't think Gary Sanchez is going anywhere. Any of the everyday guys. Keep your hands off all the everyday guys. I'm okay with giving up anybody in our farm system to get us what we need to get. I've heard good things about Garcia, but hey, our window is now. Our window is not the future. So we need to. I mean, I would only give up Garcia for a certain type of pitcher, like maybe a Madison Bumgarner type of guy. But I'm in the same breath, I'm more than okay with not giving up Garcia to land us a Marcus Stroman type of guy. I would be more than okay with giving up Clint Frazier to get Stroman and pinstripes, and maybe some other prospects, maybe even Andujar. I grew to love Andujar last year. Should have been the Rookie of the Year in my opinion, but I think we have a more than capable replacement in Gio Urshela to man the hot corner for at least a little while until somebody else comes through. But personally, I don't think Andujar is even going to be moved. I think he's still very much a part of our future, even though Urshela is kind of an upgrade on the defensive side of the playing field.
And it's interesting because some of those pieces that the Yankees could move, Andujar being the top one, is out for the year. He's got that labrum surgery, and his season got pretty much ended right away. But Betances is supposed to be coming back, and he could be a boost, but we know every year up until he runs out of arbitration, which I can't remember if it's this upcoming offseason or the next one, where his arbitration is no longer a thing. He could be a guy maybe. I mean, the Yankees just there seems to be a general dislike between, maybe not Cashman, but you and I have ranted about this going back to last year, about Randy Levine not liking Dellin Betances, and I think we both want to live in a world where Randy Levine does not have a lot of say in what the Yankees do.
Exactly.
But he is a part of the organization, and I know he's criticized Betances publicly among other players, which is completely out of line in my opinion. We were just talking with Vlad about the Dolan types out there in sports, and I think Randy Levine falls right in that category. But and it's just been, you have so many guys that are beat up right now that could be marketable guys, but then the Yankees continue to add. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm with you in that, it just, you have enough core pieces now that you're riding with. It's just the pitching. I don't think you can rely on it. Maybe you get lucky. I mean, kind of look at what Boston did. I mean, they have some better pitchers when they're all up to speed than what the Yankees have juggled in recent years in some regards. I mean, Severino being injured all year has not helped the Yankees either. But we all know what happened to him second half of last year, and Boston is still hanging around the periphery themselves, but I think they kind of came back to earth with some of their pitching, some of their bullpen. Obviously, has been a big issue. I don't know that the Yankees are where. I mean, they have some great pieces here and there dotted along their pitching staff, but without a move, I don't know that they can ride this momentum train forever. Maybe I'm wrong, because the hottest team at playoff time is usually the deadliest team, but with their injury luck already being what it is, I don't want to press any luck. I want to bring in some legitimate guys. Like you said, I don't really care at this point who you're giving up that's in the farm system. Like you said, I don't consider Gleyber Torres part of that. I mean, if Andujar was healthy, I think there's a market for him. I don't think right now that there's that much there because of his injury status and because everyone was waiting to see how he bounces back. Otherwise, I think will be a very marketable piece, and maybe he's a guy in the off season that gets revisited. But like to keep him if possible. But Urshela has been great this year. Can't really say that you want to move him. And you got Encarnacion, and you got all these guys you're rotating as it is. So at this point, I'd say all in for getting one legit top three pitcher in your starting rotation, and one legit, whether it's a setup man, because Chapman, once he gets it right, assuming he gets it right, is your closer. Ottavino's real strong, and you have other options in that pen, but I just feel like you need more. You need more. And really there's no such thing as too much at this point. So I don't know who, I would imagine Stroman is probably the most realistic, given that, like you said, there's some New York ties there. There's some common ground, I think it sounds like, in some of the talks with teams. And some of the reporters that the Blue Jays might be interested in Clint Frazier. I don't know. I mean, that's just rumblings. I haven't heard it from in the way that you would hear a Woj bomb, and that it's a definite thing. But I don't know. I think to me, that's what separates the Yankees from being the World Series champions is two pitchers and some health. Getting back to closer to 100%. It seems like every time they get close, they lose a guy or they lose three guys.
No, I mean, I totally agree with you here. I mean, the Yankees just didn't have health on their side all season long. I think they've actually got some terrific health from their starting rotation this year. That's the one area of health that they've gotten. But no consistency. Jay Happ has taken a step back this year. Everybody in that rotation has above a 4 ERA. That doesn't scream great to me. That doesn't scream confidence either. Paxton hasn't been the guy that we were hoping for him to be. He's been awful this entire year. Tanaka's really taken a beating his last couple of outings, and we know with Tanaka he can be very inconsistent, but he's lights out in the postseason for some reason. And also CC Sabathia, I mean, consistent sometimes, but he's not necessarily an ace. I love to have him. I love how he fights people all the time. Love how fiery he is. Great guy to have in the clubhouse because he's always going to be the first one ready to throw hands and No, I say that seriously though.
I know
he's got his team's back. Without him, this year might have not gotten as well as we hoped. But I think he's been a huge difference maker just being in the clubhouse. And I think in the postseason he knows that this is his last ride. So, I think if you give him a start, he'll perform.
Right.
But you should also, in the same breath, have the bullpen ready to go because who knows how much length he can give you. There can be one. This is one fault with Boone that I have. He doesn't know when to pull out his starters. He keeps them usually in for like one batter too long, and then they give up a 3-run home run or something, and then he calls his bullpen. What use is that?
It's kind of weird because it's almost like it's like they're in this mode right now where they almost have to, like, not have to give up runs, but it's like that's kind of what they thrive on. It's just offensive games, like the 14-12 game the other night. Like you can, like, and the fact that they've won a lot of these games where they're giving up high single digits or double digits runs against and they're winning is shocking to me because that's not typically how baseball's been in recent years, even with the Yankees. But their lineup is absurd. I mean, top to bottom, even with their injuries, with Stanton and Gardner and Sanchez on the DL. I mean, it's, again, going back to that point, and I know we were going to touch on this anyway, DJ LeMahieu has been a huge part of that as well, but I don't trust the moxie to last forever. If this was September and this was the case, I'd still be panicking because the rotation, the way it's performed of late, has been pretty bad. But the lineup is just in a zone. They're just, it doesn't seem to matter who's out there. It's just, if you're wearing pinstripes and you're holding a baseball bat, you're hitting the ball. You're hitting the ball. And it's just, it's absurd how good they've been and how clutch they've been. But it's just like, how long can you rely on that? So,
I mean, at some certain point, a lineup's going to go cold. I just feel like, you can't keep up your production forever. I think, a run's going to, there's going to be runs where bats go cold and, and then the pitching is just like, what I'm trying to say is that basically, like, a lineup can only do so much to protect bad pitching. That's basically what I'm trying to say here. And, players go through cold stretches, like we've seen with Judge. He's been through terrible slumps. We've seen with Didi sometimes, terrible slumps. You'll see with, Luke Voigt's inevitably going to go into a slump. I feel like, I love Luke Voigt. He's been exactly what we needed at first base. And I love how savage he is, as well. So, I love the fucking savages. I guess what's the word for that? Like, I guess our slogan, our theme.
Yes, I was about to say. I love with this Yankees team, the culture that they've built is okay. It's the traditional Yankees are always professional, pinstripes, winning championships, very serious. But this team has fun. And last year it was the thumbs down. Year it was the thumbs down.
That was
like
2
this
years
year,
ago.
It's savages, and I like that. That's a thing because they have fun. I think that's what was always kind of the cloud that followed the George Steinbrenner Yankees was, if you don't meet expectations, you're gone, or I'm going to find a way to get rid of you type of deal. And, of course, the Yankees had that core that always seemed to match expectations, at least in the late 90s, early 2000s, with Jeter, Pettit, Rivera, Posada, and then the pieces they brought in around them. But it just felt like negativity was what doomed the Yankees in the middle 2000s when they couldn't win. When they get near they either get to the World Series or lose in the ALCS, it just seemed like they didn't have as much fun as the current Yankees do. And I like that because I think that builds that culture that they always talk about. Winning culture is you get that balance of professionalism and competitiveness, but also fun. These guys are loose. I think that's what powers Boston. That's typically how Boston does what they do on at least the baseball side. Is they're a bunch of, look at the early 2000s Red Sox. I hate them more than I hate most sports eras and teams, other than maybe the Patriots. Also Boston, if you can't catch the constant theme here.
Yep.
But they literally wrote a book. I think Johnny Damon authored it or co-authored it, called Idiots, and it's Johnny Damon when he had his full beard and mullet or whatever hair you want to call that, as the cover. And it was like, they're a bunch of idiots. They ate chicken. They drank beer. They played video games in the damn dugout, and that didn't come out till later. But they had fun, and I think that's part of it. Is you got to have fun, and the Yankees seem to know how to do that. And they've shaken this. Like, they live in the expectations of the New York media and the New York fan base, which is unlike, I think, any other. I think in the U.S., that's the market.
But these guys are loosey-goosey. Like, Didi with his tweets and now his Instagram posts. And they would say we're savages and whatnot. These guys, and CC Sabathia, were ready to fight people and all of that.
Can we take a second, and I know we've had this conversation before, but can we take a second to just say that the Yankees need to keep Didi Gregorius?
Yes.
I know I'm biased because I'm a big Didi fan, and I wasn't, and I've talked about this before. When they initially got him, I was like, who the hell is this guy? He's from Denmark. Like, we gave up Shane Green. Shane Green's the next Andy Pettitte. I was so upset, and it was, I think, 2014, again, on the way to an Oswego hockey game. We were pulling out of Oswego when that trade was tweeted out. And I forget where we were going. I think we were going to, like, the North Country up to Plattsburgh or something. And, was I wrong? And am I so happy to be wrong? This guy, I mean, Judge is probably going to be the next captain of the Yankees if I had to take a guess. But Didi Gregorius is more than deserving. It's just a matter of, can they get him to a contract, where it just becomes the biggest thing is not only do we worry about the contract situation, which shouldn't be an issue because the Yankees do have the money to afford Didi. I don't care about a luxury tax if you're keeping your core pieces together. But I just think you got to keep him. He's a heart and soul guy. He fits perfectly, and he's just a fan favorite. But also, that you can tell the players love that guy.
No, I agree with you. I think Didi, is just a lighthearted guy. Completely different from Jeter. I mean, I love Jeter. Love what he brings to the clubhouse, but Jeter's kind of more of a serious, kind of all about business type of guy, whereas Didi knows how to have fun. So I just think just having him around the clubhouse, just some of the antics he pulls off and stuff like that, I think that's just important for creating a culture that's like kind of more about, we win, but we like to have fun. If you recall, exactly, like if you recall with the Jeter era and stuff like that, there would always be like different feuds between him and A-Rod, or different guys different guys in the clubhouse that just didn't like each other because one thought they were better than the other. With this team, with this culture, everyone's about each other. Everyone loves each other. They have these funny catchphrases that you wouldn't see 10, 15 years ago. I just think that the Yankees are evolving right before we know it, becoming more of a likable team in the media and a more likable team with the younger generation. So I think Didi has been a huge catalyst in that, as well as CeCe. If you remember, actually, back in 2009, the Yankees, I think, were hesitant to bring CeCe Sabathia and Nick Swisher on board because they thought they were too much of a personality. They
too expressive.
Not the Yankee.
Well, they had Johnny Damon, and he fit in. I mean, I loved him when he was a Yankee. That salvaged Johnny Damon for me was the fact he was a part of that 2009 team and a big part of winning that World Series, because I hated the dude before he was a Yankee. I absolutely hated the dude because of the 2004 Red Sox mostly. But I grew to love that because he was a part of that too. That turning, I think, starting to transition, like you're saying.
Oh yeah, I think. Aaron Judge too is just like, so like easygoing, laid back. He's aggressive when it comes to what he wants to do to help the team, and I think we saw a little bit more of an edge to him earlier this season. But at the end of the day, he just wants to win MVP. He just wants to win a World Series now. I think he's getting to that time where he wants to win, but at the same time, he wants to stay true to himself. He doesn't want to think he's above the team and above himself. He wants to stay true to himself. So I think we're starting to see a lot more of that from everybody on the Yankees, from everywhere. Like these little guys, not little guys, but like these guys who play a lesser role, like Mike Talkman, Gio Urshela. They can come in and kind of not miss a beat because they feel welcomed as part of one. Aaron Boone has a good way of integrating everybody, and the players, their energy rubs off on other people. They kind of play for each other. Like that Twins comeback would not have happened if these guys just didn't have that grit and that ability to stay in games even though they're down by multiple runs. They're just gritty, they grind, they're chippy. These guys have great heads on their shoulders. I just think this was a much needed kind of transition from the old Yankee way to the new Yankee way. I think they got to get rid of that facial hair rule as well.
They can grow mustaches. They just have to be well groomed.
Stop with that. Let them grow a beard.
I know. I think it's ironic, though, because Aaron Boone was in that Yankee culture when he was a player, and I think really he got kind of cut because of something. Granted, it was the offseason, but because he didn't fully fit that rigid Yankee culture because he was out playing basketball and tore his ACL in the offseason. I remember that vividly because Aaron Boone was all of a sudden my second favorite player after Derek Jeter because in 2003 when he hit that walk-off, it's still one of my favorite Yankee memories, is that Game 7 walk-off against the Red Sox in the ALCS. Oh my God, it's still, to this day, one of my favorite sports memories because my dad and I stayed up late. It was a school night. We went crazy when he hit that home run. And it was awesome because it was like Aaron Boone was no superstar. He was kind of a,
he's a journeyman.
The precursor to A-Rod on that third base side. And he was just okay. He was the bottom of the lineup hitter. And it was just like, you got that feeling in that game it was going to take something beyond the superstars because they were all contributing, but it was like this game could go on to 20 innings if it keeps going this way. And then Tim Wakefield hangs a knuckleball and Aaron Boone hits it out. And I think he learned from that experience, like, hey, and I know people are going to always say that he's in charge of an unbelievably talented team, which is true, but it takes a lot to manage a team like that, to manage the ego, to manage, because there always is ego, but like you said, with Judge, with Didi, with these leading players on this team, they are largely, I think, to a man, bought in. I don't think there's really any outliers, and I think you're seeing with a guy maybe like Clint Frazier, who I think deserves a shot. If you don't fit what the team is kind of putting out there as their culture inwardly, internally, you're not going to get a chance. And I think you're seeing guys like Talkman, like Cameron Maben, like they're just willing to come in and, hey, whatever you guys need me to do, whatever role you need me to play, I'm going to play it. Not only that, I'm going to play it really well. And I think everything is defined.
Stick to my strengths and weaknesses, too.
Yeah. And it's the Cashman. Cashman has done it over all eras of the Yankees this century, and with different personalities in charge, handling his job security. And he's done it both ways. And I think a lot of credit has to be given to him, but he's got to win one with this current group of Yankees. He can't let that slide. So I think to cap our discussion, I know it's been going on for a good 45 minutes now, half hour, whatever it's been for the Yankees. I think they got to buy in here. This next week here, less than that now. It's the 30th or 31st is the deadline. 31st, right?
Yeah.
They got 5 days. Make something happen. You got to give something to get something, and put this team over the top because LA's waiting. I think it's going to be them in the NL. A lot can change from now till September, October, but right now they're far ahead in the NL, and they're just a juggernaut. They're a complete team, and they're pissed off they lost the World Series last year. So watch out for LA.
I think it's going to be a very interesting potential World Series if that happens, but hopefully it goes the Yankee way.
Well, Samir, we're coming up on just about 3 hours, which, hey, I love it. I think, we haven't been on the, doing this together in a long time, so I think we covered a lot of ground. I know the NFL is starting to wake from their slumber, but I think we can leave that for next episode, next week.
Yeah.
With great time to revisit that. I mean, everybody's getting about a week and a half, 2 weeks before preseason starts up, and I hold my breath for everybody. That's the one thing I'll say about NFL. I hold my breath for everybody because this is the worst time of year for injuries.
Yeah.
Everybody's fresh, everybody's excited, and then boom, 3 or 4 stars go down because they stepped in a divot on a practice field in August. That's the worst. So, knock on wood for everybody. That's across the league, and I mean that for every team, even the Patriots, even my hated rival Baltimore Ravens. I hope everybody's healthy and that next week we get to talk about good storylines.
And, I might have some more fresh content on Kyrie and KD because, that's going to be a storyline all summer long until the tip-off. So, there may have been some things that I'm still need to get out there because I'm excited.
As you should be.
Well, Tim, great to get on for the first time in so long, man. We'll have an episode for you next week as well. We're going to get back on. We're going to make this a regular thing again.
Absolutely.
On behalf of Shooting the Breeze, I'm Samir Kumar. And Tim Mohab, he just did a salute. Thank you for listening. And Vlad, thank you for coming on again, my man. Go Nets.